Welcome to the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend, partner, and co-host extraordinaire, Wes Brown.
Todd.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Hey, I want to take a moment and acknowledge our listeners. Thank you so much for the love and support that we've received doing this thing called Tenet. It means the world to Wes and I. It's what keeps us excited to keep bringing you these interviews each and every week. Each week, we see more people listening from places all around the world. And this past week, we had people listening from the Middle East, from Iraq and Kuwait. We had people from Russia. We had people from India. So thank you. We really do appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to what we do here. And I want to give a specific shout out to a couple people that listen to us consistently. Leith O'Malley in Australia, I know he listens consistently every week. Sometimes he gives us comments on our Instagram feed, and I always appreciate that. So thank you, Leith, for tuning in. And then there's someone that consistently listens from Clichy, France, and I really appreciate you've been listening for a while. I don't know who you are, but whoever you are, thank you so much for tuning in each and every week. It means the world to us. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us via our social media on Facebook or Instagram at Tenet Podcast. But one of the few things that we failed to mention as of late on the podcast is that we've gone live with our own website, which is just tenetpodcast.com. Wes's wife, Tonette, has done a fantastic job and spent a lot of time designing and maintaining the website that's been up for about a month or so. And I just want to acknowledge her because it looks great and it's an easy way that you can easily find us and listen to our episodes. We're constantly working on different ideas to incorporate into the show and improve it. So feel free to reach out and give us any comments or suggestions that you may have. All right. You ready to talk about art?
I'm always ready to talk about art, Todd. This is going to be a great conversation. I can't wait. In fact, I know we're just going to hit the ground running, so this is going to be exciting.
We just recently became familiar with the work of this week's guest, and we're honored that he's willing to spend time with us this week and talk about it. His work is powerful, honest, warm, and very empathetic, which totally makes sense as he himself embodies all those qualities. Welcome to the program, filmmaker, videographer, and photographer David Stevens.
When I first started out, I had one camera, and at my best, initially, I had two lenses. I had a 50 millimeter lens and a 20 millimeter lens. And I would submit that I was more productive then than I am now with multiple camera systems, 40 lenses, because then you get put in a position of what lens should I use, and you don't just photograph it. And something that I learned early, when I only had the two, if I didn't have a portrait lens, you just move in, or if it's not wide enough, you move back. And so, in photographers now who know nothing but digital, they get lazy because they don't have the background or the experience having to go through all these other things that you used to have to go through in order to produce a print that somebody other than your mother would want to look at. So I don't know. I really admire what kids have available to them today, because when I got out of the Army, which really got me into photography when I was in the Army, when I got out and, had cameras and I was able to buy cameras, it was, it was very difficult. If I wanted to do video, and I did, because I did film and video, well, not necessarily video, but film in the Army. And I wanted to continue that. But back then, a video camera would cost you $50,000 for a big clunky, you got a camera here, and you got a deck, and all total, when you get all the batteries and stuff strapped on, when I was doing news, I had 70 pounds strapped to my body, running after things, going up and down stairs, climbing mountains. I scaled with a reporter one time. We went way up above tundra, up the tree line, to do a story about all the litter and trash. And they were like, it was some, I don't even remember what mountain it was in Colorado, but several planes had crashed, up there, and the debris was still there. And so they were trying to mount this effort to bring all the debris down. And it was going to be a human chain up this mountain, and they were going to just pass the debris down. And I went up there with a tripod, the deck, the camera, the tapes, and my reporter, he's just strolling along, and I'm carrying all this crap, but I couldn't do that now. And back the World Youth Day once, the Pope came to Colorado, and they had a big rally downtown where the Capitol is. And then this huge mass of people marched from downtown Denver to Cherry Creek State Park, which I don't live far from now. And I walked that whole route with all that equipment. Hell, I wouldn't even be able to take my cell phone and walk that far these days. And, and the product, the cell phone is so capable in terms of what it can do. I mean, I would be perfectly happy if this was all that I had, because it will do things that I couldn't have imagined when I started out doing, video wise, photography wise, and you can even process the images in your phone. And so the things that are available to people now, it's like the difference between, if you're old enough to remember, the Flintstones and the Jetsons. In fact, we're beyond the Jetsons. The stuff that I used to see on Saturday on the Jetsons cartoons, now we've done that and more. So it's amazing to me just what is available, because, I get people want me to, participate in this project or that project. After you've been at it so long, you can pretty much recognize if somebody knows what they're doing, and you know that if you commit to some certain projects, you're going to regret it. They don't have the experience. They don't know or understand what goes into either a film or even in some instances, photography projects. It's not that difficult, but you have to know certain things, and you have to take certain steps. And I found the easiest way to filter people out who want me to be involved in something like that. I said, well, it sounds good. Could you just write it down for me? Because, when you say write it down, people fall off. I mean, you don't hear from them again because they're not used to doing that kind of thing. Right.
They don't know how to communicate with the written word, right? And so if they can't communicate their ideas by writing it, then that's probably not something you want to be a part of, right?
No, absolutely. In fact, I won't name names, but I was involved in a film project. Well, it was more than 3 years ago. And I read the script and talked to the guy who was the director and the actor and all this stuff. And it sounded, really good. And we started filming. We did a series of scenes that took place in a restaurant, which sort of opened up the film. And then we went up into the mountains and we shot scenes up there. And it involved all these people. And then crickets for 3 months. And I don't hear nothing from him. And so he calls me and he says, well, I got it set up. We're going to go to the west side of town and do this stuff in the community, that took place in this particular neighborhood. So I get there and we shoot all day, and we don't really accomplish much because he hadn't really planned it out. And so at the end of the day, I started out about 10 o'clock and we finished about 6 o'clock, and it was in the summertime. And I'm loading up my equipment into the car. And he says, here's, I got something for you. He hands me an envelope and it's sealed. And so I didn't open it in front of me. I'm waiting until I got everything loaded. I was in my car getting ready to drive away. But I decided to open and see what was in there. It was a $20 bill. And and it's not the fact that it was $20. It was the fact that he couldn't say to me, look, I've spent all the money, because I know he had at the beginning, he'd gotten a $10,000 grant from the city. So I assumed he had just spent everything, and I don't know on what. It wasn't none of my business. But the problem I had was, first of all, the 3-month gap in shooting. And then when we did get together, there's such a lack of communication. He's not being honest. He's not telling me I don't have money. Because if you came to me and said, David, you had a project and you wanted to do it, and you said to me, I don't have any money, but I'd be okay with that if I believed in what it was you're doing, because I've already spent all the money. I mean, I got as much capability in this room, more than the TV station I used to work at. I can do stuff at this computer, and I've got 3 other ones in here that I can do whatever your mind can conceive. I mean, the software and the stuff that's available to people now, it's just mind-boggling. And the only limits or your imagination and your preparation and execution. So, you know, it's not so much for me the money, because it's somebody, I don't even know how many lenses I own. I really don't, because I haven't counted them, but I've got lenses for four different systems, and they all shoot 4K video. And I've given away to young people cameras, you know, that had an interest. I saw one guy that is a friend on Facebook, and I've known him, you know, since he was a teenager. And I was seeing him up on Facebook late at night, and he was complaining. He was sounding almost suicidal. You know, he had problems. So I called his friend and asked him, you know, what's wrong? He said, well, he was shooting downtown, and somebody ran off with his camera bag, and now he can't shoot, so he's all depressed. And this was a few days before Christmas, a few years ago. And I said, bring him to my house tomorrow. And when he came, I had an old Canon 7D that had all that firmware I forget what they call them. There's some firmware that was available free that would allow it to do certain things video-wise that it wasn't normally able to do. It was all tricked out, and it had a viewfinder and all this kind of stuff. And I gave it to him, and I gave him a lens. And I looked at him, and he's starting to cry. And I said, man, what's wrong? He said, are you serious? I said, look, I didn't call you over here to give you something and take it back. And I said, just go and start taking pictures, and don't let me see you on Facebook at 1:00 in the morning, you know, saying crazy things. And to be honest, I have not heard from him since then, but I see him on Facebook, and I see he's shooting again. But it's just the idea, you know, that, you know, you help people when you can, or at least I try to. And I didn't mind giving, because there was a camera that was perfectly serviceable. I could have done whatever I wanted with it, but I wasn't going to use it because I had all these other cameras. So here's this kid who needed a camera, so I just give it to him. Same thing with this girl in the last year. She was working a job and was trying to go to school in Los Angeles. And so I gave her old Lumex G4 with lens and a motor drive, and, you know, and gave it to her. And I don't care what she does with it. If she left my site and decided to see how far she could throw it, that's on her. You know, because once I give it away, I'm not trying to see what you do with it or trying to demand that you do certain things. And I guess, you know, to digress, that comes from when I was in the military, and I was stationed at San Pedro, Fort MacArthur in San Pedro, California. And we were doing some work at Paramount Studios. And we were there. This was a long time before either one of you. Mission Impossible, Greg Morris, and who's the guy, the brother, he was big, the guy that played next to him in Mission Impossible. And we were on that set at Paramount. And I remember I'm standing there next to the director of photography, Ronald W. Brown. And Ronald was, you know, he was a contract cinematographer for Paramount. He lived up in Thousand Oaks next to John Wayne. And they used to helicopter into Paramount and land, you know, on this helipad that they had. And anyway, we're watching this one scene, and I never forgot it. It was called Mindbender, where Greg Morris had been captured by these enemy agents or whatever. I would assume they were Russian or something like that. Anyway, he's in this all white room. He's black. He's in this all white room, and he's dressed in a white t-shirt, white pants, white socks, white shoes. And so they're filming this scene. And Ronnie turns to me and said, David, you got any questions? And I said, no, because I really didn't, because I didn't know what to think. I mean, this was overwhelming on a set like this. And, you know, a director of photography, he's not looking through the camera. He may have a viewfinder and he may check certain things, but, you know, they've got camera operators and everything else doing everything else. So, and he said, well, doesn't it occur to you how are we filming this and keep the scene, the final product, not being Greg's head floating around because he's a dark-skinned black, not a dark-skinned black, but he's darker skinned, from keeping his head is floating in air because everything is white. I said, well, no, I didn't really think about it. So he said, he's pointed at this roll of acetate filter down on the floor, took a scissors and cut it out and said, here, put this in, because they allowed me to have a still camera. And he said, put this in front of your, and it was a DSLR. He said, put this in front of your lens and look at it. And I looked, and then all of a sudden I saw what this filter did. It created that, it was a separation, and his head didn't look like it was floating. And I said to him, I said, damn, Ronnie, I said, how do you know all of this stuff? And he said, look, David, let me tell you something. He said, when I first got to Hollywood, there were certain things I was interested in, but every time I saw somebody doing something that was interesting to me, they'd do this. They would cover up because they think, you're a threat to them. You want their job. And he said, I always swore that if I ever got to where like I am now, I would never withhold information or not help somebody when they needed it. And he started telling me about all these publications, American Cinematographer magazine. And he said, another thing, if you don't remember anything of it, I've told you, he said, remember, when you have a problem, the answer to everything is written down somewhere, and you just need to know how to find it. And so fast forward, I'm at the University of Iowa running a film workshop, and I could call Ronnie on the phone, long distance. Back then it cost. You paid for every second you were talking. And he would talk to me for an hour if he needed to walk me through something that I had questions about. But he was that kind of person. And then after I got back here to Denver, I lost touch with him because there was nothing that would have come up that he would have, I would need to ask him about. But anyway, I always thought, and that attitude that he had about helping me and helping other people always stuck to me. And I said, that's the way I would want to be and I'm not necessarily anywhere near what he was, but even so, if some young kid, and it's in the past, it's happened a lot, want me to help them with something, I never hesitated, because the way Ronnie, and he just passed a few years ago, less than 5 years ago, but he did stuff like he was a director of photography in like Third Rock from the Sun, all those. I mean, if you looked him up, you'd see he had a list of credits longer than your arm. And he was just the most gracious person that I had ever met who was at the level that he was at. And, he always had time to talk to me. And I didn't call him that much. I may have called him 5 times after I left the Army, but he always took my call, and he always took the time to answer my questions. And he was just that kind of person. So, I really regret that I wasn't able to see him again before he passed. And he would have maybe had a hard time even remember who I was, but I don't know. He was brilliant. So probably not. He would have remembered, but he was a great person. But I was fortunate enough to meet somebody like him early on. And what that did for me, him telling me about, certain publications and how to get information. I would go to the bookstore, Tattered Cover here in Denver, and I would buy every magazine that was about photography or film. Didn't matter. I didn't even look inside to see what the articles were. And I would buy them all until I got to the point where I started to notice that the articles were like being recycled. And so I got to the point where I had read all these things. And so I didn't do that. And I didn't feel it necessary to buy everything, because I literally had my information in my library was superior to the Denver Public Library. I had everything they had and more. But that's what got me started and basically it was an obsession. Every month, that's what I was in Tattered Cover, buying. And I even recently, I used to have all these complete collections of American, all these magazines, but in the course of moving and in one in particular, a divorce, I lost a lot of that. So I had to let go of that because I had all these issues of everything. And then all of a sudden they weren't there anymore, but that's okay, because I've got, I've read them and I've seen them, and I've got other books that took their place. But, it's been a lifelong obsession of mine, but I no longer every month or the first of the month head to Tattered Cover, or I don't have subscriptions like I used, because a lot of the magazines that I used to subscribe to are no longer, print magazines have just,
they've all gone either digital or they disappeared completely, right?
Yeah. And all it takes is, if you're interested in a subject or a photographer or anything, all you do is Google.
Yeah.
There's more information than you can handle. So it's just a different world. But I don't know. Growing up, I didn't have an appreciation for photography. It was almost like it didn't even exist. My father had a Polaroid camera and a 8mm movie camera, but I didn't relate to it. And I would see the pictures, but most of the time they were black and white if they were Polaroid. And so I just really had no appreciation for it. And then fast forward, when I got to university and I'm on the track team, there was a guy that was assigned by Sports Illustrated to follow us around because you guys are too young to know, there was a miler on our team, Jim Ryan, who was the world record holder at the time. He had made the Olympic team out of high school in Wichita as a junior in high school. And so this guy, Rich Clarkson, who was a contract photographer for Sports Illustrated, was assigned to follow us. So every track meet we went to, he was there. But in my senior year, he would always come to me and say, David, do you mind if I do this to your, I ran hurdles? Can I take one of the crossbars of the hurdle out? And I said, yeah, I don't care what you do. And so he would do it. He said, because I'm going to put a camera in your lane. I'd wake up the next day, and you can see, if you dig deep on my Facebook, you'll see one is a panoramic shot indoors, me, and it looks like almost pitch black. And it was, it wasn't a lot of light. He took that picture. And then there was another picture of me at the Kansas relays, and it was pointing up. It was a wide angle shot, covered all the lanes, and it was kind of distorted, but it was fascinating to me. So I started talking to him about it. And then I got a camera, and I was so ignorant. The camera that I got had film in it when I got it. And the guy said, well, here's what you do. You just have to turn this dial until this needle is in the middle, and then you press it and take the picture. So I did that. And when I got the prints back, I was blown away. I couldn't believe that I was responsible for doing this. And so from then on, I was hooked. And so I did it, and I get into the military after I left Kansas. And I remember when I was at OCS, Officers Candidate School, and I ran into this guy, and he said, and we knew each other from either AIT or basic or something, but he was ahead of me. And he said, there's a colonel, the battalion commander, and I never forgot his name, Anthony J. Mendoza. He was the youngest Hispanic lieutenant colonel in the Army at the time. We were a 55th Battalion, OCS Battalion. He's going to ask anybody that has photography experience. He said, you want to raise your hand and say yes. He said, because that's the job you want. And so I did. So that meant, I don't know how much you know. Did you ever see Officer and a Gentleman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's lightweight compared to what it's really like. You were lucky if you got 2 hours of sleep at night, forced marches, you go to bed at 2, you're up at 3 or 4. When we're doing training during the day, I'm allowed to take photos. And at night, I'm off to the officers club because Colonel Mendoza is involved in all, and he was the egomaniac. He loved having pictures, and he wanted me, process the film, print up, make the prints, and give him prints. So while everybody else is in the barracks, spit shining their shoes and cleaning up and doing all the things that you have to do in OCS, I'm in the craft shop developing film and printing pictures. So that got me really started. And then when you graduate, you select a MOS. Infantry commissions were the most coveted because that was the quickest way to get promotion if you were in the infantry. But also at the time, that was also the quickest way to go to Vietnam. So I didn't select that. And I graduated high enough that I could select what I wanted. So I took a commission in Signal Corps, only knowing that it involved communications. So I go there, go to Monmouth, do motion picture television production, go to California, do all that kind of stuff. Then get out, go to the University of Iowa. My brother was graduating law school. They offered me a position teaching this photography film workshop for minorities. It was a more minority film workshop. And so we could make a film. And there's stuff on my Facebook. You could see that photographs from them and pictures of me that they took for the workshop promotion. So I was from then on, and I got back after I left there after 2 years and come to Denver. I went, I had to get a job. So I went to Channel 4. And they hired me basically the same day that I went and applied, and they interviewed me. They said, well, we don't have anything. We just offered the photographer job that we had open to somebody else. But when something else comes up, we'll get in touch with you. Well, I was walking. I didn't even have a car then. So I walked back to my, where I was staying. My parents owned a duplex, was just a few miles from downtown Denver. But by the time I got there, I got a call. He said, David, I changed my mind. He said, forget the guy that we promised a job to. He said, we're going to give it to you. And he said, will you be ready? I said, he said, are you ready to rock and roll? I think were his words on Monday. I said, yeah. So, then on, I was at the TV station and I spent 12 years there and then 5 more at another station. But basically then my motivation was I had access to all this equipment, without having to pay all that money because I had cameras and I had a darkroom equipment. But so I did that and I've been doing it ever since.
Now, before you joined the Army, you went to the University of Kansas. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what were you studying before you got into?
I was just in psychology, and I no particular goal in mind, because literally, I hadn't even thought about. I always had a fantasy about going to college, but I had no aspiration to be a lawyer or anything like that. My brother, who was 1 year younger than me, he was just the opposite. He wanted to be a dentist, but it turned out we were very good at track, and so I had, many offers for all kinds of schools from the West Coast to Kansas. But one day as a junior, and I had only started running as a junior, but I think this was the summer of my junior year. I'm in the supermarket near my house. Somebody taps me on the shoulder. It was then a guy, his name was George Brown. He was a state senator at the time. And he said, David, and he introduced himself and he said, you ever thought about where you want to go to school when you graduated? I said, well, not really. And he said, well, you ever thought about maybe the University of Kansas? And to me, that sounded good because both my parents grew up in Kansas City. So I said, yes. So the next thing I know, I was on some alumni who lived in Wheat Ridge. So I had a private plane. They flew me to Lawrence and I did the thing. It was the most boring recruiting trip that I took. But I just, in my head, I think this is where I'm going to go. And I can remember, being there, and my host was, you'll remember this, was Gail Sayers. He showed me the only thing he wanted to do. He said, David, you want to go to the movies tonight? I'm like, the hell, I didn't come all the way to Lawrence, Kansas to go to the movies. I can do that at home. So I ended up sitting at in his apartment, Santee Apartments. He brings out this, you know who he was?
Yeah.
Gail Sayers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He brings out this humongous, I mean, I've never seen it before or since, a scrapbook as big as this. I mean, it covered my whole lap. It was like huge. Sat it down, and there was nothing but full-page articles and photographs of him in high school. He was, a phenomenal athlete, period. He held the long jump record in Nebraska for 30 or 40 years. Wow. In high school. He jumped almost 25 feet way back then. And so it was him. But I decided to go there, but only because, so you asked me why, what I studied. So when I got there, just to go right to that, I had interest. I was interested in psychology. I had taken it in high school, but beyond that, I didn't really. But I get there, and I'm in the dorm. It's time to register. It was at the field house, and I go down to the field house, and I'm standing in line. I get to the front, and they ask your name, and I said, "Oh, you don't have to be. You're already enrolled." I said, "No, I just got here." So they pull out. Back then, there's the primitive type computers, and the computer would be housed in a whole room back then, and it spit out this program. She said, "No, you already got your." I looked at the card, and they had me enrolled in nothing but physical education courses. And all I thought, oh, hell no. The thing that I hated the most about high school was gym, even though I was an athlete. Undressing, going and sweating and doing it, having to come back and shower and then get back into the routine of going. I hated it. And so I said, oh no. So I marched because all the coaches, football, basketball, they were all in Allen Fieldhouse. So I marched, I went to the coaches. I said, I'm going home. And they said, what do you mean you're going? I said, I didn't come here to take gym. And so they said, well, your first obligation is to be eligible. And I mean, there's more stuff that I could go into, but I won't because it's kind of racist. But anyway, so they allowed me to choose my own classes, but it was very discouraging because you realize that the only thing they cared about was you performing. They didn't care about, what kind of goals you may or may not have. They just wanted you to be eligible. And that was very discouraging. So I hated it every second of it, the athletic experience. I mean, I was successful at my last year when I decided I can't go out like this. And I started working out like everybody else, and I did very well. But before that, I mean, I just hated it. It was just a horrible experience. So I never really got settled into anything. And then I did, when I got out of the Army, I was at Iowa, and I was thinking, oh, well, I'll go to law school, but I took some courses and stuff, and realized that was not going to work for me, because it was more reading than I was prepared to do. And, and my brother, he was just the opposite. He read all, I mean, he read up until his last days. He was just reading all, and that's lawyers. That's the way they are. They're readers, and I knew there was no way I would ever be a lawyer, because I don't think that I could have done what was necessary, which is buckle down and actually read. Because when I was with him his last few couple of months of law school, I mean, getting ready for his finals, I mean, that's all he was doing, was reading. And that wasn't me. So, that was that.
Do you always think, even though it was later that you got the photo and the filmmaking bug, were you always, do you think, a visual person? Like a very visual person?
I don't know that I was always one. I never thought of it in those terms. It's weird, because when I got to Iowa, I was taking pictures, and I was doing the workshop. And I can remember the picture. If you see the picture on my Facebook, it's just me with an Airflex camera. It was taken by this guy, Art Loomis, who was the most accomplished photographer, one of the most in all the state of Iowa. And he really praised my photography, and I always wasn't quite sure why, but he really encouraged me. In fact, I had left the Army, and I had a Super 8 camera that I had bought from the PX. And he said, well, he wanted a camera. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to trade you this medium format Veronica system for that Super 8. And so I did that, and I took pictures with that. And I always got a lot of encouragement with the pictures that I took. I did that. And I also worked with there was a Black theater group that had been created at Iowa. And I took pictures for the plays and stuff there. And the guy, the director, who's still friends, he just praised, and he was just really so over the top in his praise of my photograph. And you can see some of them on my Facebook if you look deep. So I was always encouraged. And then I got to Denver, and I did the TV, but always was photographing outside of that. And then in 1976, my childhood friend, my best friend my whole life, Floyd Tenson, who is an artist, we decided we're going to go down to Mississippi and see some of these things that we've heard about and read about. And we knew a lady who had lived near us when we were growing up. And she had moved back after her husband passed, had moved back to Mississippi. So we said, we'll go visit her, and then we'll venture off into the Mississippi, into rural Delta, these rural areas in Mississippi, and see what we can see. And so those pictures, some of those are also on my Facebook. They're not music related, but they're just pictures of people that we encountered in the Mississippi Delta. So I did that, and that was very, very well received by people who saw the images. In fact, I think it was in 70, right after that, less than 2 years after that, Floyd, my friend, he had an art show in Atlanta at Citizens and Southerns Bank. And so I had 4 of my photos blown up to 30 by 40 inches. And they were taken with 35 millimeter film. And I remember taking it to this Palace photo in Denver. I think that was Palace. And I said, I need these blown up to this size. And he said, well, we can't do it. I said, what do you mean you can't do it? He said, 35 millimeter won't hold up to that size. Well, I used to develop my film in a Kodak developer called Microdol, and it diluted 1:3, and it produced a very fine grain. So I said, well, look, I'm the one paying for it. Go ahead and print them, and I'll pay for them no matter how they come out. And when I went to pick them up, he said to me, I must apologize, because I've never seen 35 millimeter film enlarged like this. And you literally, if you go on my Facebook, you can see this one particular photo that is one of the ones he was talking about. And so I was always encouraged to do it. And I used to venture, we used to do a lot of mountain climbing and that kind of stuff. And I remember we were up in, what's that place? Not Winter Park, but what's the town west of Colorado Springs? It's a lake, I forget. We were up there getting into arguments with this photographer who was a landscape photographer. And he's telling me, well, no, that, basically was saying microdollar X, that's trash. I would never use. And I wanted to say, man, I would hold my negatives. I don't even know what your work looks like, but I know that what I produce with this system I use is will hold up to anybody. I'm going to show it to you. And so those 4 photos, 30 by 40 inch, and I'm going to show you, I'll try to anyway, show you one that I'm talking about. Those 4 photos, they were sold even before the show opened, because in Atlanta, like there was a guy named David Henderson, who was Richard Pryor's attorney at the time. Him and his wife just said they were coming, but they wanted to see what was in the exhibit the night before, so that if they saw something they wanted, they could
have
put
first
the red
dibs
dot
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you see this image here? Is it too light?
It's a lot of reflection.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Now we can see it. There you go.
That was from 76. And that was one of the photos that was enlarged, 30 by 40.
And that was the first year that you guys made
Went
that.
to Mississippi there. That was one of the images. That was really encouraging.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that earlier. I love that one.
That's a beautiful, beautiful image. I love that image.
Yeah.
Pinky Gordon. Back in the 70s, you remember newspapers used to have those inserts on Sunday. They would be like parade and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was there was an insert in the paper in the Gazette in Colorado Springs, and I forget the name of it. They had a contest, and the theme of the contest was family. And so I didn't really have any family-related photos, but because that picture of Pinky and her grandson, I said, well, that's family. So I sent it in, and it won one of the top prizes. And so, I won some Polaroid equipment and that kind of stuff. And so what they did before they posted the winners and stuff, they called me, and they wanted me to make a statement that they would include with this photograph that had won this contest. And I started talking about the circle of poverty and all this, and they couldn't get me off the phone quick enough. They said, okay, thank you. Because they wanted something very upbeat. And I'm talking because when we went down there, we saw people literally living in structures that had been there for 100 years. I mean, every rural road that you drove down in Mississippi back then, you would look off to the side and there would be these shacks, these things. You'd have to look to see what I'm talking about. There's a documentary that was made, I think, by the BBC called The Harvest of Shame. And that was one of the motivators for us going down there. We wanted to see this for ourselves. Yeah, and this house that she's living in, you wouldn't believe what it looked like. You could, if she opened that door, you could look there and you could look through her ceiling and see the sky. And there's another picture of a lady who's sitting in a rocking chair and got her shoes in the foreground, and she's barefoot. And I remember I'm taking a picture with a 20 millimeter wide angle lens, and I'm standing on the ground and she's up on the porch. I wanted to go up on the porch. She said, no, honey, don't come up here because I don't want you to fall through the porch. And literally she had, literally her roof had holes all through it. The roof was you could barely walk on it. And she and another lady who's like dressed, she has a knit cap and she's dressed like it was wintertime. She was 90 some years old. And she said she had never been more than 10 miles from where she was sitting. And, wow. But they would say to me, don't come. And, you'd feel really guilty. And you'd say, well, we go to the store. And is there anything you want? Because we offered to go shopping for them and buy. And the thing they would say, well, just as long as it's not something that needs to be in the refrigerator, because none of them had refrigeration. And the lady that I told you the picture, and it's on there too, but she said she wanted RC Cola. And I think a can of RC Cola is next to her. And then she wanted us to get her some RC Cola so she had to put it under the house. That's where she stored it. And anything else had to be something that she could store under a bag of rice or something that was in a container. Yeah, she would take that, but nothing that had to be refrigerated. So they had nothing. I mean, nothing. And it just really, really got to me. And then I didn't return. What was that? Was 70s, 80s, 20 years later, I went back and I was shooting a blues festival in Clarksdale. And that's when I met Charlie and Henry Musselwhite and those people, and were introduced to all these blues musicians that I was allowed to photograph. And they had stories that were just incredible. And I don't know. It just sort of, it was never being a photographer, or even, because I had, was it 2 years ago or 1 year ago? I had a show at this museum. It's called Bruce Watkins Museum in Kansas City. And I had a whole second floor, 79, I think it was 79 of my photographs covered this whole floor. So I had that show. And then as a result of that, then I was a part of another exhibit out of Joplin. And then this thing came up that opens on the 5th of June at the Nelson-Atkins. And then I've got these people in New York that saw my photograph and did this thing that's along with Google, where they're going to promote and try to sell my images, which is certainly nothing that I ever aspired to. I never thought about monetizing them. It just happened. But yeah, so it's not like I set out to do this, or even it's just that when I have a camera, I always feel, that's my excuse for being anywhere nowadays. And even then, when I go on these trips, that was my excuse. I want to take pictures. And anywhere I go, if I'm not taking pictures, you're not likely to see me anywhere. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's just what I love doing, is taking pictures of people and that I admire, care about, that kind of thing. I take a lot of pictures of my grandkids. I don't have but one around me now. The rest of them moved away, but so that's what I love doing. And but those things just sort of happened. I didn't seek them out. That's what people brought to me, so I'm okay with it. I resisted initially. I didn't want to be a part of this exhibit in Kansas City.
No, why not? Why not?
I mean, I don't know, because I'm not looking for attention. And then I didn't think, I said, which, there's so many images that I have. Then I thought, well, which one am I going to put in there? And my goal, since I have, especially these blues musicians and some of these people that allowed me into their lives and allowed me to photograph them, every opportunity that I get, I always want to show those photos, because otherwise, what good are they sitting in my computer, or being prints sitting on this table behind me? If nobody sees them, they don't mean anything. So like I think I told you in a conversation, I had some people in Rome, Italy. They were doing a blues, it's called the Mojo Blues Festival. And that would have been 6 years ago. It was 6 years ago, I think. Anyway, it was the year after my son had passed. And they reached out to me. They wanted to know, because they had all these pictures of Junior Kimbrough. Can we use some to promote this blues festival here in Rome? And I said, sure. And I sent them, 5 or 6 different images. And I said, well, just tell me which one you want. And they ended up making a poster. And they sold all the posters and all that. And so, and the first question was, well, how much? And I never charged for that kind of thing. They also did a tribute to either RL or Junior at Russ College in Mississippi. And they wanted them. You can see those on my thing too. I sent them 5 or 6 pictures of Junior Kimbrough. And they said, well, what should we do with the prints? And I said, when they're done, how do you want us to ship them back? I said, no, just give them, because he has family that are still there. So I said, just give them to if they want them, they can have them, the college can keep them, but I don't need them back. That's another thing about doing stuff digitally. I can send you a copy, everybody a copy, and it doesn't take anything away from me. But they kept them and they gave them to the family, and they reached out to me because he's still got 2 or 3 of his sons who perform, and they occasionally put out albums and they want to use an image or something. So I let them do it. And, it gives me, it's also like Arthur Turner, the fife player,
yep,
who's probably, of all of them, had Martin Scorsese used his music to open up the movie Gangs of New York. That's Arthur playing. And so the Mississippi Folklore Society or something. I was looking, I don't know, Googling and saw they had one of my photos of Otha on their masthead, but it was very degraded. So, I contacted him. I said, look, I said, I'm the one that took the photo and I don't mind that you're using it, but I would prefer that you use a higher quality. So I sent them the image, and the same thing they made of his granddaughter, who now travels the world doing his fife music, Sade Thomas. And I met her. She was only 5 years old when I met her, and Otha was, at his height. And she was now, fast forward, she's doing it and traveling, and Otha's long gone. And this professor at the University of Mississippi was making a documentary, The Legacy of the Fife. I forget, I think that's the title. And I came across it on YouTube, and I saw they were using my footage from when she was like 5 years old. And I didn't care. I was okay with that. So his name is Dr. Dennis, is his last name. So I found out, I located him, and I sent him the same message. I said, look, I saw that you're using it. I can send you the original footage so that, you don't have this YouTube rip that you had. And I'm not calling taking it, but it was just look bad. And so I sent it to him, and he was really thankful. His first thing to me was, how much? And I told him, I just want you to have the footage, because I feel in my head, I feel an obligation. Mm-hmm. They allowed me to do this, and there it is. I mean, I'm not able to compensate them. So why would I hoard or deny people that want to utilize the images to publicize them, even though they're gone? So I never asked for money for that kind of thing, even though I've been offered it. But
I got a question, if you don't mind. I'm going to go back,
sure.
And I'd like to go back to the Pinky Gordon photo back in that you took in 1976. So just for process, what kind of camera were you using, and what film were you using on that?
I was using Pentax Spotmatic. It was taken with a 50 millimeter lens, I think it would have been, I don't know if it was a 1.8 or a 2. I was shooting with Tri-X, and that picture that you see was developed microdol at a dilution of 1:3.
Wow. It's a beautiful photograph. I love that one a lot. That is,
you should see the large picture. There was a news anchor in Denver that when I worked at Channel 4, Renelda Muse. And Renelda was the first Black anchor that Ted Turner hired when he opened up CNN. And he hired her to do the weekend anchoring for the news. And she would fly between Denver and Atlanta and do that. She bought that photograph. And because of the pandemic, that picture that you see is not a reproduction from the image. I went to her house because she's the one that bought it. And it's sitting in her house, 30 inches by 40 inches. And I literally photographed it with my Sony camera. And that's how I reproduced that. But it doesn't really look, it wouldn't look significantly different. But that's how, because you see that brown edge on there, that's actual, it's a cherry wood frame that it was framed in. She offered to take it out of the glass. I said, nah, I'll do it this way. Because, you just have to get the right angle, and so you don't get the reflection. And the little reflection that I did get, I was able to eliminate it in Photoshop. That's the image I have. Floyd has the negative, and I'm going to get him back, but I haven't been able to get him because he lives in Manitou. And so when he gets, he's visiting his daughter in Seattle right now, and he's going to be gone for a couple of months. But when he gets back, I'm going to go down and get the original negatives, because our purpose for going back then was for him to get imagery for him to make paintings of. But, the photos took on a whole nother life. Oh, yeah. And, and I let him use them. I gave them to him, the negatives. I let him have those about 10, 50, maybe even more than 10 years ago, because he wanted to start using them in his painting. And I said, okay, but now it's time I want them back, because at least the ones of Pinky, the ones of Rebecca, Corrine, and Fred that I have. So I'll get them back, but not to sell them or anything, but I just want them because they're mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to scan them. I want to scan them so that I will have a digital file. And then, he could have them back if he wanted. But so that's the story of that. But yeah, been a long time.
So was that back in the day your favorite film stock, Tri-X?
Tri-X, that's right. That's Rebecca. with that, and she's got that wool cap on, and then she's got 3 layers. You can see she's got the outer sweatshirt, the inner, and then a shirt under that. She's got 3 layers of clothes right there. And I remember asking, I said, Rebecca, how can, and it was 95 degrees in Mississippi. And I said, why? How can you do that? And you know what she said? She said, we wear all these layers of clothes because when you come out, and she was sitting on the porch, when you come out into the heat, you start to sweat. And then once the wind blows and it hits your clothes and sort of goes through that first layer, it almost acts like an air conditioner. It, because the wind blowing through that layer of clothes that's wet, moist, it cools you off. And this is the lady, Rebecca Nelson, who said she had, this is the poor, and that reflection in her eyes that you see, that's me. That's me in her eyes, taking the picture. And she said, she had never been, she was 90, I want to say 93, and I don't remember exactly, 93 in the mid 90s when this picture was taken. She had never been more than 10 miles from where she was sitting that day. And so, I just love her. Her picture was another one that was enlarged to 30 by 40. Rebecca, Pinky, Fred, who was the guy leaning up against the wall, and I think Corrine with the shoes. That was the 4th one. There were 4 of them that were at that show at Citizens in Southern. But you can see that. You could blow that up the size of a wall. And it's a 35 millimeter negative that it originated from. That guy.
And that comes from your experience in the darkroom of experimenting and knowing your medium, mm-hmm. and knowing the extent of which you could blow that photo up. I think that was an interesting story that you talked about, going to the film lab and saying, hey, I want to blow this up. And when they're telling you you can't do that, you're like, no, I know you can,
Do it. Just do it. And yeah, it literally looks, the print that they did. If you saw the print that Renelda has, which is the 35 by 40, I think it was 30 by 40 inch print that's framed. If you look at it and you're a photographer, you're going to think it's from a medium format negative, because this was printed, the print that she has was printed in a darkroom at a lab in Denver. And it's not an analog digital, it's not an inkjet print or nothing like that. This isn't from the negative. This is from photographing or scanning a print that I had done in the darkroom, this image that you're looking at here. But literally, and I have a really good high-end scanner. So, the print's fine and it picks up all that detail. So I could probably do a print that might be a little more detailed than that, but it would be hard to tell the difference between this and maybe one that if I had the scanned image. Well, I won't know until I get them back from Floyd, but that's okay. I do have some prints that I made in the darkroom of it. So it's okay.
It's a beautiful photograph. She was a beautiful woman. I love that photograph.
It just breaks my heart. And there she is sitting in a wool cap in 95 plus degree heat in Mississippi in the summertime at her age. But you just look at that gay. Every time I see it, it just really tugs at my heart, because, being in her presence, talking to her, and just how gracious she was and how gracious Pinky was, and all of them. And I'll tell you, to back up, we were staying with Miss Owens in Jackson, Mississippi, the lady that we had grew up around here in Denver. And so we get there. And so she had told all her friends that she had these young guys that were coming that she knew as when they were kids and they were coming to visit her. So all of her neighbors and stuff, they came to see us and meet us. And I said, what are you boys going to do? I said, well, we're going to go out into the Delta and take photographs. And you know what their attitude? These are Black people now. You know what their attitude was? Why would you want to photograph those people? They really they were ashamed. They said they live in shacks. And he said, we got people here in Jackson that live in brick houses. I said, lady, I'm sorry, no disrespect, but where we come from, everybody lives in a brick house. I don't know nobody that doesn't have a brick house. I said, no interest in that. I want to see what else is here. And they just couldn't wrap their brains around that. Why we would be interested in these people, as they referred to them. That was their way of referring. Those people is what they said, how they referred to these people that we encountered and talked to. And they literally were the most gracious people I've met in my lifetime. And that goes for the blues musicians. I mean, there were times when I would go and visit Othar, and I just, well, literally just sat in his kitchen and talked to him. Did not take a single picture. There's another musician, Jessie Mae Hempel, that was, was a big favorite of Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt spent 6 months living with Jessie Mae in her trailer down there in Mississippi. And I got a picture of Jessie Mae's trailer on my Facebook too. And she, they were just the nicest people, even though they had some of them had a dark side, but you could understand it if you knew how they grew up. Jessie Mae in particular had at one point was riding pretty high and was touring Europe every year. And she was there was a professor who's still there actually at the University of Memphis who would organize these tours and take them over there. And she would tell me this, she told me this story about she'd get to the UK or something. And as soon as they land, he would collect the passports of all these musicians that were going to be on tour. And so he kind of really had control of them. And they literally, she said, and I've got it on tape, and would literally go from city to, she had a concert or performance almost every single night somewhere in Europe. And they would drive to them. And she said every new city they would get to, they would always have a rehearsal space for them. And they would rehearse and then do the show. What they didn't realize that while they were rehearsing, these people in Europe would be recording, and then they would turn these rehearsal sessions into DVDs or whatever the format was, and then they would sell them as if they were, produced by these musicians. And when they discovered it, they confronted, David Evans, this professor, and about that, and he denied it. And so she's telling me this, and as I'm filming her telling me this, I said, I looked it up. I got it. She gave me his phone number. I called him at the University of Memphis, and I said, Dr. Evans, I said, I'm down here in San Antonio, Como, with Jessie Mae doing this, and she's telling me a lot about her life, and she said this A, B, and C about you, and I just want to get your reaction. And he just launched into this tirade about how crazy Jessie Mae was, and she's making it up. But I know that's not true. Why would this lady living in a trailer, make this up? And literally with a stack of uncashed checks, royalties from who knew what. And we ended up literally on one trip where I didn't take any still pictures of her this particular trip when she was telling me this, but she wanted me to take her to get her check, one of these checks cashed, because she wanted the money. I said, well, Jessie Mae, why don't you open up a bank account? Well, she said, well, I don't trust him. I said, well, yeah, but that's who has the money. She said, well, drive me down to Tunica, where they have the gambling boats, and we'll go down there. They got a lot of car dealers down there, and I'll buy another car, and they can give me the change. And so I've got a video of us driving all from San Antonio all the way down to Tunica, and the whole time she's just running commentary about every car we'd see. She knew who was in it, and she'd be telling me about it. We took her to a radio station, and they thought she had died, and it was just really weird. But just spending time with these people, they felt like family. And she literally, I'm not making this up. She adored me. She just loved me to death. And I remember one time we were there, and it was time to pack up and leave, and we were going to come back the next day. And she said to Floyd, my friend, she said, Floyd, just leave David here. She said, leave him here. I'll take care of David. And here she is. She has to use a walker and a cane. And I said, Jessie, I got to go, sweetheart. And I've got it on tape. I might put that together and send it to you at some point. But she would pray over me. She said, yeah, I'm going to get this one. I'm going to sprinkle it on Dave, and I'm going to pray on him. And these were just wonderful people. And it's really one of the things that bothered me. Fast forward to not too many years ago, this photographer from New York had went down there and photographed these people that I had photographed. But when he got to them, they were all on their deathbed down there. And there was one, Napoleon Strickland, who used to play the fife and this kind of thing before he was even bigger at it at one point than Othar was. And when I visited him and taped him, and he was playing a harmonica, and I taped him doing that, and he's talking about his life and all this. But when this guy got there, Napoleon was in his deathbed, And somebody had brought and played a guitar, and I guess it didn't sing. So he picks this guitar up, and literally Napoleon is in his bed, hospital bed, obviously hospital bed. He takes that guitar and places it next to him as a prop and photographs him. And the first thing was, what the hell is that guitar doing in his bed? It has nothing to do with what he did in blues. So I call this lady, her name is Dr. Johnson. She's the one that everybody goes through when they do blues projects. She and her boyfriend at the time, they started Living Blues magazine, which still exists. And so she knows everybody she knew everybody from Muddy Waters, B.B. King. She knew everybody. So when you went down there, whether it was when John Spencer went down there or Iggy Pop, and they were trying to hook up with these musicians, they had to go through her. So I called Patty because we're friends. I said, Patty, do you know this photographer that took these pictures? I said, he's not only has these certain musicians for sale, went back to New York and got a gallery, and they had the pictures up, and that was the cheapest picture was selling for like $1,200. And I said, not only are he's selling these pictures of Napoleon and Sam and all of them for these exorbitant amounts, he's got a picture of you in one of these images. He's selling. I said, you didn't know. So she called him. But I really resent that. And I mean, I'm friends with him. Well, as friendly as you can be on Facebook. But I really resent people like that. Because first of all, they're manipulating things. They're not coming across a situation and photographing it as it is. They're going to orchestrate it and manipulate it to create what in their mind is an image. One of the people that he was photographed, that I had photographed, he took him, sat him in his front yard in a chair. I mean, in my mind, I mean, you're free if the three of us are all going to go photograph the same thing on different days. We're each going to come back for something different. And that's okay. Everybody has a right. But when you go that far and introduce elements into an environment that otherwise don't belong or have nothing, that I have a problem with. And then he was selling these things at these prices. And I know they weren't, and some of the people that were still alive, they weren't, Patty in particular. She doesn't need the money, but she didn't even know he was selling her image in New York City. But that's what they do. So that kind of thing that bothers me. But
that goes back to your journalism background, though, being true to the story.
Yeah,
and they don't have a clue.
Right. Like even putting it in that context, as a photographer, in particular, now I'm speaking to television. You go to get your assignment, and they say, here is what the story is, and they'll give you whatever materials they have. But inevitably, when you get there, it's nothing like what they're telling you it is. And you literally have to make something out of whatever it is.
Out of nothing sometimes, right?
Yeah, something out of nothing, yeah. And I've got to the point now where I don't try to manipulate. I might say sit here or sit there, but I'm not going to bring things into it. I work with whatever it is. It's like, for instance, I did a photo of Ed Dwight in his studio. And I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, you have a number of really great photos of Ed in his studio. Well,
there's one where he's sitting on a stool. Well, when I went into the studio, I'm looking around. I don't want to photograph. I did photograph him at his desk, and there were certainly, it was limited. So I said, well, Ed, is this something you could sit on? And he said, well, I got this stool. So he brought a stool, and so I set it off to the left, camera left, and then on the back, on the right end of the frame, is a sculpture that he did of these blues. And he just loved that picture. And I wasn't really thinking about it, but I was just so limited in what I saw, without being too manipulative. And all I asked for, I said, I would want to photograph you, but I want you to sit on a stool over here. And he did it. And I did several, I might not have, maybe 5 or 6 exposures at the most. But what's so good about digital, every time I took a picture, I look at it. And then sometimes I would even zoom in to see how the expression and the focus. And once I saw that one particular picture that I posted of him sitting on that stool, I was done, but if that had been film, I might have banged off a whole roll of film and not known what I had until I, came out of the darkroom.
Right.
So that's one of the advantages of digital. I can remember when newspapers made the transition from film to digital cameras. And I remember asking one of my friends, I said, what do you think about this? He said, man, I love it. Because before you go to a situation, I don't care if it's the governor cutting a ribbon or doing something, you bang off all these shots, and then you turn over your film to the lab. Oh, there's a weird.
Yeah.
You turn over the film to the lab, and they will look at all of them and they would choose, but inevitably they would choose something you didn't like. He said, digital, if I look at the back of my camera and I see something that I like, then that's what I'll delete the other ones. So I don't even give them the choice. And so that's the advantage, I think, of there's another one, Ed, that I'm talking about, though, that's him sitting in a chair.
Yeah, I was scrolling down, seeing if I could find it.
Yeah, but
it's so true what you just said, David, that inevitably, especially when we shot film all the time, mm-hmm. if you gave somebody, a bunch of choices, inevitably they would choose the one that you dislike.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah.
so you learn only to give them exactly what you want to see published, right?
Yep. Well, I don't know how much. The guy that really got me started was the photographer I was talking about. His name was Rich Clarkson. And Rich Clarkson, he ran the Denver Post photography. He was the head of National Geographic photography. And Rich is an icon in photojournalism. He mentored more Pulitzer Prize winning photographers than any other person on earth. And that Day in the Life series that Time Life put out,
uh-huh.
Day in the Life of America, Day in the Life of Hawaii. Yeah. Those are all because of Rich Clarkson. And I mean, if you Google Rich Clarkson, you'll see who he is. I mean, that's who got me started, got me interested, just because he was just that fascinating to me, that the things that he went through to get a picture and his obsession with it. And they said that when I had friends who worked for him at the Denver Post, and I would ask him, what's he like? He said, oh, he's hell to work for, because you even have to wear a tie in the dark room. Rich is like that. And he
was old school, right?
Yeah. But he's the best of old school. And
yeah.
You know who Jim Ryan was, the miler? You never heard of him?
Yeah.
Used to hold. Well, anyway, he said to me, I met him one time. I saw him downtown Denver. And I said, we started talking, reminiscing about KU. And I said, when's the last time you saw Jim? He said, I was in Washington, D.C. And I was walking down the street, and there he was. And we started talking. And he said to me, Rich, God talked to me and told me I should run for Congress. Sure enough, he did. And he was in Congress for about 9. And he was one of the dimmest bulbs on the Christmas tree you would ever encounter. And I mean, Jim, he's unbelievable. But Rich, and I never knew and I did a feature on him when he was the head of Denver Post, and I was at Channel 4. And he never said anything about the feature I did. I didn't feel so good about it, but that's neither here nor there. Say a month, maybe in the last year, I looked up, I'm part now on Facebook, Sports Illustrated alumni, all people who work for Sports Illustrated, photographers, editors and stuff. I'm a part of that group. I've never taken a single picture for Sports Illustrated, but that let me know that he appreciated me, because why would he nominate me? And he's literally, his story, I'll tell you, he has a company in Denver called Rich Clarkson and Associates that does every single Division I sports championship. He's responsible for all of it. And he has all these photographers working for him, and he had this big old office down on 17th Street. But in the last few years, somebody that worked they tried to stage a coup on Rich. He said, he was telling me, he said, well, we want you to look at this apartment, because he's up in age, He wants you to look at this apartment in case you get to the point where you need to move out of your house. And he lived over there near, I want to say, right off of what is that street? Off of Colorado Boulevard. You know where that Jewish center is, and there's a Greek thing there, and the Jewish.
Oh, yeah.
Over near George Washington. He has a house there, and I've been to his house. But he said they took him to see this house or condo that they wanted to show him, where he would have assistants and all that kind of. He said he gets there, and his apartment is filled with his stuff. They had gotten stuff out of his house and put it in there, and they took him to a doctor to have him get a physical, and it was because they wanted to have him declared unfit They wanted to take over his company and get all of his archives and all that kind of stuff. Boy, you should have seen all the photographers rallying to his cause. I called, you know Damien Strohmeyer?
I do not know.
Damien's a big time. He's Sports Illustrated, was in Denver for a while. Damien Strohmeyer, all these big time photographers. Boy, they was rallying. And next thing we know, Rich is back in his house and they got somebody that serves as his guardian. I mean, I admire him more than any other photographer I've ever known, because he's from Kansas. And he went to KU, and there are pictures of Wilt Chamberlain. All the iconic pictures of Wilt Chamberlain when he was at Kansas were taken by Rich. And Rich was he was a student at KU and was working for the paper in Topeka, and then Sports Illustrated because of Wilt, and then, it just snowballed from there. But I've met some really great people in my time that I really admire. But
and you're connected to a number of not only musicians, but also artists that you're friends with all over the place, which I think is fascinating. You've had a lot of really interesting experiences. What's one of the craziest things that you've ever experienced or seen as a photojournalist?
Well, when I was working with TV, there's so many things that I can hardly count. I mean, I've been on scenes. Well, I can tell you one that's not so gruesome. There was a multiple homicide somewhere in Wheat Ridge. This guy had shot up this house and killed maybe 5 people. So we all get there and we're looking through the windows and stuff, and you could see bodies, coming out from behind the couch, and they made us move back, and there was a guy still in there, and they're trying to talk him out. And so he said, I'm not coming out until you can make all those cameras go away. So the Wheat Ridge, the captain, I don't remember his name, he said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. He said, you guys go to the end of the block, and when we get him to come out, we'll call you. So they get in there, they talk him out, and then he comes out, right? He comes out of the house, and they got him in handcuffs. And all of a sudden, he comes out, and then, back in the day, everybody's got these Frezzies, they call them, these on-camera lights that would sit on a little pole like this. And I mean, they're the brightest goddamn things. I once put my camera on a tripod and looked into, I don't know how anybody could endure an interview with that light in their face. So this guy comes, they bring him out, and they say, okay, guys. And these lights go on simultaneously. And this guy starts crying. You said you were going to make him go away. And the captain turns, he said, I lied. And that just made me, I couldn't get over that. And I mean, we were also out west in Denver. This guy was he was doing some kind of excavation on his property, and it collapsed and somebody got killed. And we're all there filming and stuff, and he wants us gone. So he looks at all the photographers, me and my buddy from California, who's big old huge guy, Gunner. We're standing there. He looks at all the photographers, and he cold cocks this girl who was a photojournalist from Channel 9. Man, you should have seen everybody jump. And then, I mean, it's been extremes. I mean, so many horrendous things. I was doing the Capitol Hill rapist story. There was one time a girl who had a boyfriend. She lived out in Lakewood or somewhere like that. And what happened, she didn't show up for work, so they called to see what the problem. And her daughter, or I think it was a daughter, answered the phone and said, "Was your mom there?" They said, "No, mommy's head is in the aquarium. Her boyfriend had killed her and decapitated her and put her head in the aquarium."
Wow.
Unbelievable. I mean, stories like that. And I mean, it got to the point where when I drive around Denver now, I associate neighborhoods with crimes, because that's what you did. When something happens, that's your main thing, especially something horrendous like that. Or Ted Bundy. I had to do a story, and I forget who the reporter was. I did it with, it was either, forget the reporter, but we did, and we rechased everything that Ted did. I was a living expert on everything Ted did. And we went from the jail where he went up in the ceiling, climbed up, and then the sheriff's quarters were right next, and he dropped down in there. And then he went to, I think it was Vail, and then the airport, Stapleton, he was in Florida before they even knew he was goddamn gone. because they had given him credit cards because he was defending himself. So they gave him credit cards to make phone calls and all this kind of stuff. But he was unbelievable. And I remember we did an interview with this guy, jailer, and he had asked this jailer in Utah when he was in jail, because he spent some time in the jail in Utah. And he said, his question to the jailer was, what state, something to the effect of which state are you most likely to get executed in for committing murder? And his answer was Florida and Texas. So that's where he went, was to Florida. And he said at some point, and I don't know who, because it's been so long, who it was that if they let him go, he knew he would kill again, because when he was free, he felt like, and this was his word, he felt like a shark on a feeding frenzy, because he would literally, when he was in Salt Lake in law school, he would drive on the weekends all the way down into Colorado, hundreds of miles, with that Volkswagen with the seat missing, and waiting for to see some girl by herself so he could knock her over the head and put her in that passenger side. So we did all those, we retraced all of those things. And I was in the Aspen, the courthouse, and in that window, and I had to look out that window where he jumped to the ground and then, was free for a few. Boy, so things like that really stick out. And even worse was my mother was best friends with this lady whose son stabbed his girlfriend, stabbed the girlfriend's mother, did all these things, and raped her in front of them. And the mother, she's riding with her dying daughter or dead daughter down to Denver General. And so this guy, then he goes on the run. And, my mother was his mother's best friend. So they catch him in Omaha. So he calls my brother and wants him to help him because my brother was a lawyer. My brother said, no, it was so horrendous. And I can remember, I don't know how long you've been in Denver. There was a guy, Capitol Hill rapist, who was running around raping all these women. And turns out I knew his mother. And so he got away. I remember doing the press conference at the Denver police, and they had his photograph and they knew who he was, but they wouldn't let us publish it because and say, don't you want everybody to be on the alert for, he won't get away. He hasn't got 2 dimes to put together. They caught that boy a year and a half later working some job in Atlanta. He had been free all that time. And it just so many things. News is, I don't, especially now, I don't hold it in high regard because news is all about what's the most sensational story.
Exactly.
It's not about what is of interest to anybody. It's all, what's the most horrendous thing? What's the most sensational thing that happened? I can remember me and this one reporter, Cynthia Hessen, some lady had slit the throat of her kids. And they want us to go knock on her neighbor's doors. And the question they wanted us to ask, what were they like? The parent. What kind of goddamn question is that? And what does that add? Why do you care what the neighbor thinks? And I remember when I was with Gary Hart, when he was on the road and we were in Nebraska somewhere when that story hit about that boat that he was on with that girl. Do you remember who Gary Hart was?
Yeah. I remember that whole story.
He would have been president.
Yeah.
He would have been president had he not got caught up on that. And I can remember sitting and watching a news feed when he was asked that question about the rumors of him having an affair. Hey, I'm not doing nothing. If you don't believe me, follow me. Wrong fucking response, because the first thing every news director is going to say, well, we got a story. He's denying it. So we're going to assign people to this story. And if they prove that he's not guilty, that's the story. If they catch him, that's the story. So they couldn't lose. And so they find him sitting on that boat in Miami somewhere. And that was
Donna Rice, right?
Yeah. And when that story broke, we were with him in I think it was in Omaha, somewhere in Nebraska, maybe in Lincoln or Omaha. And that story broke. Man, we run back as he was on the road campaigning. And we go back and he goes back up he was living up in the mountains. And when he hit his where he lived up at Evergreen, I forget now. But anyway, the whole road leading to his place where he lived up there, lined with reporters from everywhere. And it got so bad, they were up there, all the news media were up there for a couple of weeks trying to get, reaction and all this kind of stuff. It got so bad that anybody in a Parker they were interviewing because they thought they lived in the same town that Gary Hart lived in. It's news people can be very ridiculous.
Yeah, his boat was called Monkey Business.
Yeah. Well, the movie Groundhog Day, that people used to say, "What's it like working for the news?" I said, "Watch that movie. That's exactly what it's like. I don't care. Maybe you don't repeat the same story, but it's so similar that you think that it's the same story. I mean, there's very little that, and all these obsession with what station wins all these awards. It's all about who has the most sensational story. Yeah. It's all about being there at something, and and it's not that these are have any value beyond that day, and they have all these competitions and pat each other on the back. It just really put a bad taste in my mouth just doing the news and realizing what these people who are making these decisions are really like. I mean, I can remember familiar with Denver arguing with producers because they literally did not know the difference between the 5 Points and Park Hill. To them, any place that Black people live was 5 Points. And I would have to say, that's not the way it works. Black people are spread out nowadays. This is not 1950. But they didn't know that. And they didn't care, because they're not committed to doing anything meaningful. Right. They're just trying to produce something that keep the commercials from bumping into each other.
New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenet podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening. I got to ask you this question as I'm thinking about it before I forget. Was there a time where you had an assignment that you just refused or decided, I'm not going to photograph that, or I'm not going to do that? Did you ever walk away?
No, never done that. And to put that in context, we had a reporter at Channel 4, Wendy Bergen. And this was a sensational thing that happened where she did, when series sweeps come, when they're doing that's when they're monitoring who's watching what and decide who's the most popular news station. They call it sweeps. And that's when they go for the most sensational stories. So they produce these series type things. So Wendy, her bright idea was to go and produce this story on underground dog fighting that she thought was going on. Well, it turns out she couldn't find it. So she staged it. Oh. And I can remember going into the newsroom in the morning, her and the reporter, I still remember him, he was a friend, Jim Sterler, and Wendy would be in the editing booth, and they would say, as soon as I get in, David, come here. So I go in and they'd be showing me this video of these dogs fighting, and they're not telling me that they staged it. I didn't know. And I'm looking at this dog's fight. I said, I don't want to look at that. And so I go about my business. Well, they get busted. And she gets fired, and she has to go on trial. You'd have to look it up. I don't know what the exact charges were, but she was from Connecticut. She was from, I don't want to say New Haven. What's the rich county in Connecticut? Oh, whatever it is. That's where she was from. And so she was very well off. And I got called grand jury up there at the Taj Mahal in Golden. And that was their question to me. They said, David, because evidently in talking to people, they knew that I was friends with Wendy and with Jim. So they called me and their question to me, David, you're hypothetical, or you're the photographer and you go to the desk and they give you an assignment. Do you ever question that assignment? And I guess this was relating to, do you ever say no? I said no. I said, because if I objected to everything that I found objectionable, I wouldn't have a job. So I just assume that they've done their homework and that what they're asking me to do is legal. So I do it. I don't question it, because that won't get you very far if you just refuse to do something. And so that was their question to me. Also, I remember we had a female news helicopter pilot, Karen Key. that went down in the wintertime. She was up in the mountains partying, up in Vail or something, and a plane went down in Castle Rock. So she calls, it's on the weekend, she calls into the desk and asks them, did they want her to go up in the helicopter and participate in this search for this downed aircraft? Well, I said, well, we're not telling you to go, but whatever. And so she comes down, goes to, we would hang our car out there at the Jeffco Airport. It's off of 36, whatever. So she goes down, and she happens, when she gets to the airport and gets the helicopter guy, there was one guy, a mechanic, that he worked on the aircraft, and he's there. She said, you want to go for a ride? So he jumps in. They go, and literally, whatever that condition you get, vertigo or whatever, when you're flying in snowstorm, she didn't know whether she was upside down. But she literally flew at 100 and some miles an hour into a mountainside, into that thing that you see down in Castle Rock, that little flew into that. Literally, she got decapitated. And it was really weird. I was in Honolulu doing the winter baseball meetings. I get back, myself, and I think it was one of Al Albert's brother. I can't think, what was his name? His last name was Albert. I think it was Albert. We were in Honolulu for a week. The baseball meetings. We get back and we're at the airport, and we get loading our stuff into the cab and going to go to the station. And so the cab driver said, what station you boys say you're from? And we said, Channel 4. Oh, that was your helicopter that went down. And I'm thinking, no, but we did not realizing I've been out of contact, and that's a long flight to Honolulu. So we didn't hear, and we're not in communication. So I said, we're pulling out of the airport, and there's a newsstand. And I said, could you pull up so I can look at the news? And there it was. Channel 4 chopper or whatever, however they framed it, goes down, 2 dead. So she was killed, and the mechanic was killed. They settled millions of dollars on both of them's family. But the guy who ran Channel 4 at the time, he was a true POS. And that sucker, he denied. She had been under psychological care. In fact, when they brought her from Phoenix here to fly the helicopter, she didn't even have enough experience to be allowed to fly solo in the mountains, because flying in the mountains is different than flying in flatland and Phoenix and stuff. In fact, the pilot that she replaced said when they told him that he no longer had a job and that she was coming in, he knew because she took his job in Phoenix. He said, she's going to kill somebody. She doesn't know what she's doing. And sure enough, that happened. And I remember being in the air. We went down to the Army Depot in Pueblo down there, and we were coming back, and I look over and she's crying. And I said, what's wrong, Karen? She said, oh, nothing. She said, you mind if I sit down? I said, you can do whatever you want to do. So we sat down on some mesa, and somewhere in my bedroom, I got a bag of film. And I guarantee you one of those rolls of film is probably her sitting on that mountaintop, just crying her eyes out. And I had this little 35 millimeter pocket camera. And so I'm taking pictures of her, not really for any purpose, but I never got them developed. But I'm going to take them to the shop at one time and get them and see if that's on there. But and then they literally denied. She was seeing a psychiatrist 2 or 3 times a week, because she had a lot of anxiety issues. And they literally denied it, denied knowledge of it and stuff. Hell, I used to do a series with Otto Schutte, who was the director of skiing up in Winter Park. And I used to do the ski program with him. And I used to have to go up every other week and do this series of stories that were related to the mountain, Winter Park. We did one weekend or one day we would do something about the luge and just do all these kind of things. And I spend that time up there, and I'd come back. So there was a World Cup, I think it was World Cup skiing, but they were having some kind of big competition at Winter Park. So they sent me and Karen to fly up there to start covering it. We had a townhouse and everything. So we cannot get over the pass because there's too much turbulence. So we spent maybe 4 or 5 hours trying to find a way up into Winter Park. We couldn't. She couldn't navigate I looked down at her wrist, just shaking. She said, David, you think we should go? Can we go? You be all upset if we go back? I said, Karen, you could have went back 3 hours ago, because I'm not into helicopters. I didn't like them. And we get back into the newsroom, and the first question for the news director, I just want to know, did Channel 9 make it? And that was Jug Hill. He was a big time. He flew in the mountains all the time. He said, well, yeah, as far as we know. So they said, come in here. Next thing I know, they're reaming. I can see through the glass. They're reaming her out. She comes out, she's crying and stuff. They say, David, go get in your car and drive to Winter Park. So I did. What else I'm going to do? I jumped in there and I headed on to Winter Park. I'm driving behind a semi truck and he's spitting out rocks. And I'm right on his ass. And so all of a sudden I look down and the red lights are on. And what had happened, he had punctured my oil pan, one of those rocks had, and all the oil that came out. And I was in a gigantic paperweight that was not going anywhere. I sat on that mountain for 6 hours, and they claimed that they had chopper out looking for me, highway patrol, and nobody would stop. I got my hood up and stuff, and I'm sitting in the car. Car ain't going nowhere. And finally, here comes a highway patrolman. Said, "Man, we've been looking for you." So they took me on up. I checked into my townhouse. I never saw the car again. I don't know what happened. And that's why I wasn't worried about, all this stuff that was happening on the road. Because first of all, it ain't my car. And if it breaks, they got to fix it. So they brought me up there. I did my story. And they towed the car away. We're up there. They bring the governor. The governor's there. And I'm standing with the general manager. We're watching the races and stuff. And the governor, and I forget who the governor was at the time. It was either, I don't know. But anyway, the general manager, and I'll say his name, Roger Alden, he said, David, he said, go tell the governor's people, we'll give him a ride back to Denver in all that turbulence. We had just been there and Karen had finally made it up there. I said, Roger, do you really want the governor flying over that pass with Karen? And he looked at me, he rolled it. He said, yeah, on second thought, forget it. That's their mentality.
Right.
Whatever. Because then it would have been a story that we could have ran. Channel 4 Chopper gives governor a ride back to Denver so he can attend whatever it was he wanted to get to. But that's the way they thought. They just were not very ethical or very moral people. And working with them, man, it's just, there's still some that I really value, their friendships, and I'm still in touch with them. But a lot of them, no. I mean, as a fact, if you watch Channel 4, Kathy Walsh, she called me in January. She said, David, can we interview you? And I knew what she was talking about. She wanted to do something about my photography for Black History Month. I said, Kathy, I'm going to have to pass. Well, this was all via text because we're not talking on the phone. I said, no, I'm going to have to pass. And I said, I think there's several people who are much more worthy of attention than me. And I gave her some names of Black people in the community who are doing things on a daily basis. She never even contacted me. She, I'm so sorry that you declined. I really wanted to do that. Because we've been friends ever since, she started at Channel 4. I was there when she got there. So we used to live, a couple of blocks from each other in Congress Park. But I just didn't want to do it because I knew I'm not going back. First of all, I don't want them coming to my house. And beyond that, I'm certainly not going into the studio. I'm not going to be back in there, so that they can make some meaningless, frivolous story about nothing. Why me? There's so many people that would deserve attention. And my photography is one thing, and I don't mind doing this thing at the Nelson or the thing in New York. But that I knew what their motives were. It wasn't anything that I wanted to get on board with. So I just, and we're still friends, and she still likes my photographs on Facebook, but that's the way they think. And I know it's not her. They're telling her, we need some stories for Black History Month. What do you got? And all she could think of was me. And I said, no, thank you. Because I did that. In fact, the year before, this last February, this production company in Arvada did a feature on my photography. I went out to their studio in Arvada, sat there, they interviewed me, they used my pictures, they did all that. And you haven't seen that on my thing?
I found a video of you talking, and I found it after. Talking? Yeah. And then I couldn't find it again. I wanted to look at it again, and I wasn't able to find it.
I'll send you guys a link. It was, and I went there because these are people that I knew, and it was just something, they put it up on YouTube, and they're a production company in Arvada. So I did it for them because, they didn't have it, they weren't trying to.
There was no agenda there, right?
Yeah, there was no agenda. And so I did it. But when they came the next year, and I think she might have seen that and thought, well, hell, we can do that too. Well, not as far as I'm concerned, you can't. And I mean, I wasn't trying to I don't know what the word is. I wasn't trying to ignore them or anything like, but I just know what they're about. And I wouldn't have felt good. I wasn't going to do it.
Kind of feeding that, right?
Yeah.
Like feeding into that.
Yeah.
And I totally get it. Like I can totally understand that as somebody that's worked as a photojournalist. I've seen the underside of things
and to the choir.
And everybody, everybody that works in photojournalism, whether it's in TV or still photography for a news service, they all know that what the score is. They all know that it's about, the sensationalism and, just it's entertainment, right?
Yeah, it's all it is. It's all it is. And I admire them for going through all that and stuff. But when you see these people, they win these awards, it's just a matter of you just happen to be somewhere where something very significant was happening and you photographed it. That does not take a lot of skill. If you've got half of any kind of visual sense, if they put you in that situation, like these days, I remember back when the Ku Klux Klan was assembling on the Capitol steps, and they were turning over buses and setting fires, and I'm right there filming that stuff. So now fast forward to today, and they had some protests out the Capitol. Somebody calls me and they say, "You want to go down?" I'm not going down there. I've done that. I've been there. I know what it's like. You got to be fleet of foot, and you got to be very careful because, first of all, the relationship between the law enforcement and photojournalists is not what it used to be. They have it's very adversarial. They don't respect you. They look at you as somebody who's there to keep them from doing their job, and they don't want you there to record whatever it is they're doing that might be wrong. Because I can remember back in the day when nobody had a cell phone, running up on stories on Colfax, and they would be beating the hell out of somebody. As soon as we get there, they stop because they know if we manage to photograph it, it's going on the air. But they're not telling you get back and don't do this and don't do that. They allowed you back then to photograph stuff. Now they'll get up in photojournalists' face, have them face down on the concrete in handcuffs, breaking their gear. It's just a different world now. I don't want to be a part of that. Especially, I remember doing a thing not too many years ago, a couple of 3 years, protest. And I'm thinking, I would do this, but these days with the equipment that you have, I can put an extender on one of my long lenses and I can stand at the end of the block and take a picture of you. I can take a picture of your tonsils from a block away with the kind of equipment that we've got now, where you used to have to get right up in them and to do that. But now you can stand back. Because, there've been many times we'd roll up on us. I saw cops, there was a fugitive or somebody in a barricaded in the house, and they would be flanking the house, and they start firing, and it would be like a circular firing squad. They're not even thinking I'm shooting across, but I got a partner over here or somebody from another. Craziness, just craziness. It's just a different world, and there's just no glory in it. There's no honor in it. There's nothing. In fact, I think they did a poll. Journalists are rated either just below or just above injury lawyers, personal injury lawyers. They're perceived as vultures, is basically what they are. So I have no respect for that. There was a time when it was a little different. Yeah. Not a lot, but I was young and stupid, so I didn't really know. That much. I question.
Well, I think until you're in that position, you don't know. I think a lot of people don't know. It's they have the news on it, and it feeds the fear and it feeds the negativity. I don't even like watching the news, to be honest with you, because they're just it's all negative.
Yeah,
I'd rather not even see it.
I'm with you on that. I will read headlines, and sometimes if it interests me, I will go deeper than that. But I don't need somebody that just got out of college yesterday trying to explain to me what's going on. Right. As soon as you look at them and as soon as they open their mouths, they have no clue what they're talking about. And I can look at these facts and make up my own mind about it. I don't need some news commentator or news readers, what they are, telling me what this is all about. I don't. I can just interpret that stuff for myself. Yeah, but you're right. I can't watch it. I really can't. Too many things I object to. And there's enough going on in the world to aggravate you without inviting that kind of stuff into your life on a daily basis.
So we talked about the kind of the dark side of the news, but obviously you did this for 12 years. What were some of your favorite stories that were more
Actually,
on a positive?
17.
Yeah.
Oh, 17.
Years.
Oh, that's
yeah.
right. Because you said 12 at one and five at another
yeah.
station.
Yeah.
So that's a long time. What were some of the favorite stories that you worked on that were positive and made you feel good?
Oh, I won a national award, National Women in Something. It was the first time that a TV station had won this. And I won it with Marcia Neville, who was a sports reporter. And we did a series called Super Women, and it was about these young girls who basically all of them were in middle school that were doing multiple sports. And they were like, they would do triathlons, they would do track and field, they would do swimming, they do all these different things. And they were literally training almost like they were men. Because my daughter was kind of involved in that. And so I brought her to her, and we did this story, and we interviewed all these athletes that were doing all these female athletes who were doing all these really extraordinary things, and nothing that any parent who had a child who was not at their level would have ever realized what was going on. So it was called Supergirls or something like that. And I asked Marshall to send me a copy, but she never did. I might reach out to her and see. But it was about that, and it was about how they trained and they competed. And what sparked it, I was with my daughter, who at the time was in the 8th grade. And we went to a regional cross-country championship in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we're up on this mesa. And there was this little girl who, in her whole career growing up in New Mexico, had never lost a race. So I'm not knowing this. I'm standing and they're running off into the country and doing, circling around this mesa. They circled around a couple times, and her parents, mother and father, were standing right next to me, screaming at her. And she's trailing my daughter. Well, my daughter wins this thing. And then here comes his daughter. And she comes up and she's apologizing to her dad. And her dad literally said, "Get the fuck away from me. You didn't do a thing I told you to do. Just get away from me." And so she turns to her mom and looking for some sort of comfort. And her mom says, "Get away from me too. Your dad is right. You didn't do nothing we told you to do." And I said, "I'll be damned. Why would you subject? These kids are going through enough, and the competition is serious, severe, and they feel all this pressure, and they're looking to their parent, and their parent is giving them this kind of," and that's what I told Marsha about it, and that's when we did the story. But that probably, and it was weird, but the downside was, this was my idea. I gave her all the subject, all the people that we interviewed did this. We won the award. It was the first time a TV station, previous to that, it always went to either magazine or newspapers. And this was the first time a TV story had ever won this award. So, of course, the award is in New York. Do I get to go? No. Marsha gets to go. They don't even, and she gets this trophy and all that. I got nothing. I said, I'll be damned. I remember one time I won with another reporter and photographer. It was 4 of us team. We did this tornado swept through Denver. We won an Emmy for this coverage. And I'm looking and they're getting them, and they want us to all pay for the statue. I said, "You can keep the damn thing. I'm not paying." I should have, but
they wanted you to pay for your own Emmy?
They didn't want, because they had to have more than just a couple. So they couldn't say, "Well, we'll buy these 2." They would buy, if you were just a team of reporting photographers, they would pay for it. But since it was 4 of us and we'd all contributed, they wanted us to, they weren't going to take favorites. So they wanted us all to pay. The rest of them paid, not me. I said, I could care less. Don't mean nothing to me. I'll only get it because I happen to be in the right place with, all this damage and this tornado is ripping down Monaco Parkway. But that's the way they thought. So no, thank you.
That's crazy.
No, thank you.
So while you're doing all this working in television, you're also doing your own personal projects. Your photography is so heartfelt. Like, I can see the connection and I can feel the connection, and I can, in talking with you, I just know that's the kind of person that you are. And you said earlier in the podcast, you said that there was times that you were hanging out with some of these people that you had photographed, but you didn't take any photographs at all, because I assume It wasn't the right time. You were more
No.
there to experience and have that connection with that person as opposed to taking their photograph.
I'll give you an example. And his pictures in there, Frank Frost, and the pictures in town, Frank Frost,
The
Eddie
blues
Mays.
harpist?
Yeah. He did
Okay.
the Ralph Macchio, whoever did that blues, Crossroads. But I was visiting him, and we're sitting at Eddie Mays Cafe. He lived there. I've got several pictures of him inside with the pool table, sitting out, and Eddie Mays at the open door. And we're sitting there, and I'm just talking. And there's Frank. And he says, and a tourist bus came by, and it was full of Japanese tourists, and they were taking these pictures of him. And he said, sometimes that really makes me feel like an animal in the zoo. He said, these people ride by, they take pictures, they never get out of the car and talk to me. And they never talk to me. I never see the pictures. So I started feeling kind of guilty. I said, well, Frank, I'm not here to take any pictures of that. I just want to see how you work. He said, oh, it's not always the same. It's not always like that. So he goes back in Eddie Mays, and he comes out, and he has, and I don't even remember which picture it was, but he comes out with a picture that I had taken and sent to him. And he said, see, sometimes they send me the picture. And I said, well, Frank, I took that picture. He said, oh, you did? And I said, yeah. And then even after that, I didn't take any more pictures that day. I was just there to talk to him. Because I don't know, as a photographer, and you may think this way too, I don't know. But if I have a subject that I'm taking pictures of, it's like when I was at Ed Dwight's studio. Once I took that one picture of him sitting there on that stool, and I had taken a bunch of other ones, I knew I was done. I mean, I could have stayed there and photographed, for more as long as I want. But once you see, an image that you really like, then I feel like there's not much else I can do. You can keep photographing, but what's the difference going to be? And that's why. And another thing you can consider with my photographs, like the Mississippi, those were all taken within a space, in the case of Mississippi, within a week, 5 days maybe of going into the Delta, everything within 5 days. All those blues musicians, most of them were probably taken within less than 3 days. I didn't spend like some of my friends who live down there and then spend like weeks. I'm literally only there for a couple of days. And like the pictures of Other, where he's posing, that was 1 day. And what else? Another time I went there, I just did video, and I've posted that before, but I never combined the two. I never went to Other's and took video and photography. And when I did the photography, it never lasted more than 2 days. I'd go there 1 day and I might come back the next, and then that was it. And that was with film, and that was not knowing. I would leave there not knowing what I had. I mean, I wished I had access to something digital like now, where you would know, And I can remember like when the Mississippi trip, I took several hundred rolls of film down there, and when you shoot film, once you're out of film, like so many 36 exposure rolls or 12 exposures if it's 110, if it's 1 or 2 1/4. And then when you run out of film, you didn't search more, and you have no idea what you got.
Yeah.
So I can remember many times driving up and down looking for whatever the stores were that sold film back then, so I could buy more film because I'd run out. Hell, now with the setups I've gotten, storage that I have available to me, I could take one camera, and with the cards I've got, I could go around the world and just take my laptop and offload at nighttime and be ready to go in the morning. Yeah. It's just a whole different world.
So can you talk about, the blues series? What brought that about? What made you go and do this whole series on the blues?
I wanted to go to this blues festival, and it was in Clarksdale, and I want to say 96. So we go there and we meet the people, the organizers, and they hire me they want me to videotape all the acts. So, and I met this Dr. Johnson that I told you about. And so we're in a roped off area, filming everything and filming every act that came on. And in the course, in the evenings and stuff, we would meet them and see them, talk to them. That's when I first met Charlie Musselwhite. In fact, Charlie, his wife, Henry, she bum rushed me. And I'm behind his mirror. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I explained it to her, and she said, oh, okay, no problem. And so we did that. In fact, I forget there was another blues musician. Well, I don't think she was even blues. She did something. But anyway, he came up and said, well, he doesn't want you to be in film. And I explained to him what I did. I said, okay, fine. I turned my camera toward the ground and I just started drinking a beer and eating whatever I was eating. And next thing I know, he had went back and told the guy what I was doing, because this was for the blues, the Delta Blues Museum in Clarksdale. So he comes back. The guy that had told me to stop comes back and said, oh, I told him. He said, that's okay. You can go ahead and film him. I said, no, never mind. We're taking a break now. And I didn't film him. So I did that. But in the evenings, I would meet these people, talk to them. And Patty, Dr. Johnson, she said, David, you guys need to go down to Junior's down in Senatobia. This is a notorious juke joint that John Spencer and all these people, Iggy Pop and all these people went to. But we didn't have time because we'd already been there 5 or 6 days. And I said, I don't think we got time, because it was, it was like an hour and a half from where we were. So we said, we'll come back next year. And we did. And knowing Patty, she puts us in the car and literally drove us and introduced us to all these musicians, Other, Junior, RL, all of them. And we got to photo Sam and Doris, and we would photograph them. And then we were on our own. Then we come back, we could meet them. I'd come back another time and see him again. So that's how it started, because Patty Johnson, Dr. Johnson, she knew every significant blues musician out of Mississippi, and they knew her. And she took us to places that I can't even describe, some that I didn't even photo. We went to a place that was, the guy had a shack that was down an embankment next to a river, summertime. Literally, so he had written some songs at one point in his life, but all these blues musicians wanted, but he didn't want no parts of it. She introduced us to him. So he comes up this embankment and he's wrapped in an army blanket. It's over his head and it's around his shoulders. And it's because mosquitoes. I mean, I had never seen that many mosquitoes in my life. They're everywhere. And we're under a street lamp on this dirt road. And he's explaining this is why he's got it on. And I was so intimidated. It was one of the most visual things I'd ever seen, but I couldn't take a picture because I didn't want to uncover with all these mosquitoes. And when we finished talking to him, we were going to leave. We looked at the car. We were in a rental car. And we said, oh, shit. We had left the windows down and the car was full of mosquitoes. And the guy says, just get in your car, leave the windows down, turn the air conditioner on, and drive as fast as you can. And that's what we did. And I remember we were at a juke joint, Bobo's, one night. And I'm in there, and there's a white guy in there. And he said, man, you want some insect repellent? Because I didn't have any. And I said, yeah. It turned out to be, he was a guitarist for Bonnie Raitt. And he lived somewhere in Mississippi. And we sat in his truck, and we sprayed this stuff on. Because the morning before that, I was sitting at breakfast at Patty's, and Floyd was sitting across. He said, man, what's wrong with your elbow? And I didn't know. I looked, and I had something the size of a golf ball on a bump, something, because down there, the insects are the size of mini helicopters. And they ate me alive, and it was just, but, it was stuff like that. But you meet all kinds of people down there. It was unbelievable. And I really, as hostile as I considered Mississippi before I went there the people, for the most part, were pretty gracious. And the thing that I appreciated about it was you could be in Denver and you could go into a little store somewhere, maybe in Lakewood. They may not want you there, but they're not going to say that. That's not. But you go down there, they'll let you know as soon as you get in there whether you're welcome or not. Because in '76, we're getting ready, before we go out in the Delta, we're in Jackson, and we go to this little hat store in Jackson, Mississippi. And I'm just trying on all these caps and looking in the mirror. And this lady comes up, she's running the store, owned it or something. She says, son, you're not from here, are you? And I knew exactly what she meant. She said, down here, we don't try on hats unless we're going to buy them. I said, oh, you don't, but in Colorado, we don't buy nothing. We don't try it on first. So I just kept on trying. and she didn't say nothing else. She just let me do it. And I bought a hat. Floyd bought a hat. And then we were literally in a place one time, and I don't remember, Floyd would have to refresh my mind. It was a little town that they only had one store. And it was these Asian people that ran it. And they literally were behind. You might have thought it was a prison encampment because it had high fences, barbed wire along the top. And you go in the store and you literally would almost have to walk sideways. And it had bulletproof glass along the whole length of this store. And you would literally look on either side to see the different merchandise. And you had to say what you wanted. They would pick it up, bring it to the cashier part. And then they had one of those rotating things where you would first have to, they tell you how much it was. You have to put the money in this rotating tray that rotated around. And then they rotate your stuff out. And I'm taking pictures of this stuff because this is just the most, I couldn't believe this. And the man said, no pictures, no pictures. I said, I'm going to call the cops. I said, you call all the cops you want. And I just kept clicking and so did Floyd. But they were crazy. And I'm thinking, but I understood they couldn't do nothing because if they did anything to these people, where would they shop? It was the only place to go to get, bread, milk. They had everything. But they were so intimidated or whatever they were going through that they didn't want nothing to do with these people other than to sell them whatever they wanted to sell. And I'd never seen stuff like that. But, I don't care what this guy said. I did everything I could in my power to aggravate him. I said, I don't care, call him. I don't think he ever did because we didn't leave. But I went out of the store, but unbelievable some of the stuff that I would see down there.
It's just a different way, right?
Yeah.
Different place.
Yep. But having said that, at least I knew where I was, and I knew, whether or not you were welcome in a certain place, you knew that. And in Colorado, at the time especially, you didn't know. People being polite or whatever, or they're at least tolerating you. They may not like you. Nobody knows what they're doing when they're out of sight. But and I felt pretty comfortable and welcome. And I saw things, because having traveled to the Caribbean was another eye opener because down there, it was sort of like the reverse. In Colorado, you go into a store, the people that own the store, run the store, mostly white. In the Caribbean, whether it be Jamaica or the Bahamas, Black people everywhere. It's like being in a whole nother world. And I noticed a lot of similarities in things that I saw in the Caribbean and the stuff that I saw in rural Mississippi. For instance, they had at Other's Picnic, what they would do, this man would bring down these goats from Memphis and they would slaughter these goats and butcher them and then they would barbecue them. That's one of his songs, Everybody Hollering Goat. And I videoed the whole process, the goats being brought in, him putting them in the pen. They take a .22 and shoot the goats in the head, kill them, and then go in there and castrate them and hang them upside down, skin them and throw the goats in this big cauldron, look like one of those witches' cauldrons that you used to see in cartoons. And then they would throw this meat on the barbecue. And I remember the day of the picnic, they were selling these barbecue sandwiches and they were trying to get me to eat one of these goat sandwiches. I can't do it because I saw the whole process. In fact, the thing that they were stirring, they were boiling the meat first in the big cauldron. And I got the video, so I could show you this. And they're turning it with a pitchfork and scooping it out of the cauldron and putting them into these big pans to take them over to this barbecue pit. And I remember, the day before, I saw that very same pitchfork stuck in the middle of some kind of manure in the middle of Other's yard. So what I never saw was them sterilizing this pitchfork. So there was no way I'm eating this goat sandwich. So I had to pass on that. Only thing I ate was potato chips and drank a pop. And at one point, Other used to make moonshine. And he brought some of that out and I tried that. Boy, that's like, I imagine that would be almost the equal of drinking rubbing alcohol. It was the strongest, unbelievably strong. But it was a different world. But I've seen, National Geographic and West Africa, they do the same kinds of things with these animals that Other and them did in Mississippi. It was like, passed down.
Yeah, from generation to generation, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I'm telling you, he showed me his refrigerator. And he had every kind of forest critter you could imagine was in that refrigerator. He had squirrels and possums and all that kind of stuff, but they eat it. And I wasn't so horrified by that because my grandfather, when I was a little kid, he lived in Kansas City. We go there for Thanksgiving. And I remember the night before Thanksgiving, he went hunting for raccoons because they ate coons. And I guess possums too. I might be one or the other, or maybe both, but they ate squirrels and all that kind of stuff. And that just ruined Thanksgiving at my grandparents' house because these critters that they were cooking sometimes, that's what I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons. I'm not going to turn around and be eating them for Thanksgiving. So I sympathize with those. I mean, I understood what they were doing, but different world, very
sure. Yeah, it must have been fascinating. I would love to go experience that and meet the people. When was the last time that you made a trip down there?
Maybe 2005. I
Okay.
went down there. That was the last time. And the last time I went to see Other and also Jessie May. I just saw those two on my last trip, and you could see if I'm going to put it together because it's just sitting here on my hard drive. This whole thing with Jessie May from her trailer, driving her Cadillac. We drove her Cadillac into Tunica and we were looking to cash checks and it's just and she's just, the whole time she's just talking about all these experiences and the people that we encountered. It was fascinating. She was a sweetheart. But yeah, 2005. Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that footage sometimes. I think
I'm gonna put it. I've been saying I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna just have to do it because some of it I put some up, very short clips. I put it up on YouTube. The same with Other, but I've got so much that has never seen the light of day because I got that whole process of the goat. I hesitated to put the goat thing up there because you got animal activists and all this kind of stuff. That would see this and be horrified probably. And in fact, myself, all the shots that I took, I never, and I'm normally in a situation, I will shoot from back to get and then I will move in to get close up. I stood back and shot the whole thing because I didn't want to be up while they're skinning this goat and stuff. I didn't need any extra detail. What I had from a distance was enough for me. But I've got it and I'm going to put it together. And there's people who are interested in it, but I just never got around to it. And she's gone now. And so I don't know. I might put it together. So easy. Who edits video?
Well, neither one of us do.
Yeah. So this is all audio and West is the audio technician here. He puts it all. He's the audio editor.
Wow. I edit video. I can do audio. I got this thing called, have you heard of DaVinci Resolve? It's a video editing program. It's also a very sophisticated audio editing program. But I just bought this thing here. Oh, can I show it to you?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's nice.
It lets me shuttle through video and put in and out points. I mean, it's an amazing little device. And I just got it, in the last month or so.
I edit video on college, but with the old Betamax.
Yeah, this is sort of this reminds me of that because a video clip, I can this little wheel that's here, I can shuttle through it either frame by frame or very rapidly. Yeah. And then when I can switch, I can switch between the timeline, whatever the edited version is. I can switch between that and whatever other clip that I want to look. I mean, it's wonderful. And it does kind of take me back to the machine editing. It's very similar to that.
Yeah. And you can edit audio with that as well?
Oh yeah. This audio program that's incorporated with DaVinci Resolve used to be a $50,000 audio editing program.
Wow.
And now you get it literally, you get it for free.
Wow.
Black Magic Design. If you bought it, if you download it, and you can get a free version, which has the full version. The audio program is called Fairlight. And it's got some ungodly number of tracks you can use. But you could do audio editing in that. And it has a free version. All you got to do is fill out a very short form, who you are, where you live, and then you can download that. And you can use it to edit any kind of video you would want. Plus, you could just do audio. with it. It's got so many tracks that I can't imagine anybody utilizing all those tracks that you can involve. But very, very fishy. And that's another thing. Now there's so much available to people who want to do content, whether it be audio and video. There's nothing stopping them, because this program I'm telling you about, it's free. I've got the paid version, but that's only because I bought it. The full version came with this console, so they gave me it. So I got the full blown version, but there's very little difference. It is in video editing. It allows you to do some things with 8K and that kind of stuff, but I don't even do that. But I have it, and it's a perpetual license that once you get it, whether you get the free version or the paid version, you get the updates for free.
Nice.
And never will you have to pay another dime. And unlike Adobe products or even Avid and those kinds of products, that has a fee that never ends. So, yeah, look into it. It probably, I mean, as an audio person, you might really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll do that, because I use Adobe products now, and we all know how expensive that stuff is.
Well, I don't know why I do it, but I get the whole suite, and I only use Lightroom, Premiere, and Photoshop. I don't use Illustrator, but I pay the full price. But that's all right. You know, it's there in case they ever want to.
That's right.
But yeah,
so
it's unbelievable.
What do you do most of your post-production now, the digital stuff of your photography? Do you use Lightroom mostly, or Photoshop, or?
I always start out in Photoshop, because I shoot, and I don't even know why I shoot whatever camera I use. I always shoot JPEG plus RAW files, but I never use a JPEG, so I don't even know why I do that. But I bring them into Photoshop and make all the whatever adjustments I want to make. And then I will bring it. If I do anything like with some photos, you might notice I might do a vignette or something, or sepia. It's much easier to do that in Lightroom, because I've got all these different, you know how it is. They got all these plugins. I can put a picture up there, and I can go to my plugins. And I mean, I've got so many choices of what kind of look almost too many, because, but I've got it down to a few things that I do. But having said that, it's just an infinite number of choices. Once you put it into Photoshop or Lightroom, there's just no end to what you can do. Yeah. And unlike like back making in chemical dark in the darkroom, if I wanted to make a sepia print, that was a very toxic kind of chemical, very powerful, that you definitely didn't want your fingers in, and you had to go through all these chemicals and staining, and then you got to wash them. But now it's just a matter of just picking a plug-in, clicking it, and there it is. And you can make it as dark or as light, you've got controls over the look that you could not have even imagined in an analog world.
Yeah.
Just wasn't available. So I like it. I love it.
I like your black and whites. They have a little soft, little soft look to them, and I do that. A little contrast. And I love the vignette. I know there's a lot of photographers that hate vignettes, but I love them, and I love the contrast that you have going on in your images. They're just phenomenal. I love your black and white stuff to no end.
Well, thank you. And I hear you about the criticism of they don't like this, they don't like that. Well, I think all of that's very individual.
Yeah.
What I like, you may not like, but it doesn't matter to me as long as it makes me happy. And that's all. I'm not trying to please anybody. I do not enter competitions, other than that one I told you about. I don't do it because I don't necessarily believe in that. And I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. And I'm not trying to compete with anybody to say who can do the best photograph. It doesn't matter. You do yours and I'll do mine, and we'll go our separate ways. I don't, because I appreciate all manner of photography. I mean, some of my favorite, well, now currently, who Vivian Mayer was?
Yes.
She's I think, and she didn't get any recognition when she was alive, right. But I hold her up there with Diane Arbus, all of them. In fact, I would put her ahead of them in a lot of ways, even with people like Robert. I mean, she's right up there in my mind with Robert Frank and all those kinds of people. She was a tremendous, but never sought or received any kind of praise or anything about her photography. So, I mean, saying that, there's so many different photographers. A person that I really don't have a lot, and it's not that I don't respect her, but I don't necessarily like her. I don't look up to her for is Annie Leibovitz. Too controlled, too orchestrated, way beyond what anything, who wouldn't be able to produce photographs when if you look at her behind the scenes stuff, she got 12 people standing behind her. She's got somebody looking at every image. Every time she takes a snap, it's being transferred to a computer and they're working on it. And she's got banks of lights. Hell, who wouldn't be able to produce photographs under those conditions? And it's not that she's a bad photographer, but that just goes to the point that I made earlier, that it's all about opportunity, access, and the fact that Rolling Stone allowed her to start when she was very young to photograph these certain people, and that carried on. And once you get identified, once they identify you as being a certain type, it just goes on. And there's only room for so many people to do what she does. And once she grabs that little niche, nobody else can crack it hardly at all. So, but it doesn't make other people who do similar stuff any less of a photographer than she is. I just don't think she's as great as some people make her out to be, and not to say that she's bad. I mean, but just understanding the process and what she has available. I almost bought her Mamiya 67 that she has. She was in bad times.
She was.
I forgot what her problem was, but she was selling it. She was selling that system, and I was going to buy it. And then I thought, hell no, because I already had one. That's what this is.
Yeah, I see that workhorse behind you. Yeah. I love that camera.
Yeah, me too. And I said, why would I spend that money and I forget what she wanted for? It was more than it was worth. I know that.
Right.
And probably mostly because it was hers. So I passed. I didn't, and she didn't, I don't know if she ever sold it because it was up there on eBay or wherever I saw it for quite a while. But then she recovered and she's fine now. But, she had to sell the right. I think she sold the rights to a catalog, did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. She pretty much was bankrupt for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. She really overextended herself, I think, and got herself in a little bit of trouble, and then ended up having to liquidate some of her assets in order to get back on top of it, Well,
are you familiar with Greg Gorman?
I am, yes.
That name, yeah.
We went to school together.
Really?
He doesn't claim it much, but he was at KU when I was at KU. But then he left KU and went to University of Southern Cal, and then never left California. But we're friends on Facebook, But we didn't do photography together, but he was there and stuff. But
he's a great photographer.
He is. I really like Greg's stuff. Yeah, especially stuff that he does with He's done with Grace Jones. I don't know Grace Jones, but I met her brother, Chris, and she also has a sister, and I don't know if she's still, who used to live down outside of Colorado Springs in Manitou. She had a sister down there. My friend Floyd, he knew her, but I never met her. But Greg, he's big time. He did a lot of the iconic images of Grace were done by Greg. But I really love his photography. You know who Bruce Davison?
Mm-hmm.
Him? I met him when I was at the University of Iowa. I forget what he was there for, but we had long conversations, but I really admired him, his work. And Eugene Smith, I met him and talked to him when they brought him in down at Colorado College one time. Photographers like that. My favorite, though, if you're talking about just photographing people, Arnold Newman.
Yes.
I mean, he certainly manipulated, but he just was a flat out genius with his images, and the kinds of manipulations and stuff that he did, they made whatever the subject look better. I mean, you can take it as you see it, but he just had a very graphic mind, and he saw things that I don't think a lot of people would have seen. But I think if I had to, he would be right at the top of my list of people who I really admire. But any other questions? I'm running out of talk.
Well, so when was the last time that you shot film, David? Do you still shoot film or not really anymore?
I haven't lately. I've been intending to, because I brought this out of mothballs. And then I have a refrigerator I got a case that's got film in it. So if I decided to shoot tomorrow, I'll just have to bring the film out, let it thaw out tonight. But I wanted to do it with Roy down in Saguache, but I don't know, because it's such a process, with the film, the tripod, you got a meter, you got to do all that, and you don't get the feedback. So probably won't. If I manage to go down to Saguache, I'm probably just going to do digital, but I could. I wish if my grandsons were all here, I would probably do something with them, but I could anytime I want. I used to have more backs. I only got the one back here. I have the Pentaprism, but for some reason it stopped working. But I like the viewfinder and the magnifier anyway, even though the image is reversed. I'm used to that, so I like it. But I could. And this motor drive, it works, and it's in good condition. I've got 3 lenses for it. I've got the wide, the telephoto. I got 3 lenses for it. The 50 millimeter and 2 other ones, 180, and then one in between the 50 and the 180.
Like a 150 maybe?
Yeah, something like that. And,
or the 80. I think they made an 80 for that system, right?
I don't have the 80. I've got the 110.
110. Oh, yeah. And 50, I love that lens. That's a great lens.
50, the 110, and the 180. Those are the 3 that I have.
Yeah. Is that the same system you have, Todd?
So that's an RB, right, David?
RZ.
Oh, that you have the RZ too? Yeah. So we have the exact same system. Yeah. I saw a picture of you with I think a RB at one time. Maybe I'm wrong. In your hands.
It was the RZ. In my hands, it was this one. RZ.
Okay. But I love that camera system. It's the only medium format camera system that I've kept.
Oh, right. Yeah, I got rid of mine too. I used to have a full 645 Mamiya system. I had the RB. I had 2 of those. And then I got this RZ. I got rid of the RBs, and I had multiple lenses and all that kind of stuff. Then I also had Fujica 6x7, 6x9, wide angle lenses. I mean, I had so many of them, but at a point they became more of a burden than anything else. And I sold them right before everything went digital, so I just got in under the wire.
I know you could see it coming, and people were selling their medium format systems, their Hasselblads and Mamiyas, and they were just getting pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And the RZ system was the most malleable, the user friendly as far as what you were able to do with it. Yeah. So I kept my RZ, knowing that I wasn't going to get anything for it. And on occasion, I've broke it out, but it's been a while myself since I've shot film.
And that's why I haven't sold it, because I'm not going to just give it away.
No.
Right? I'd rather, go to my grave with it sitting on my bed than to give it away, because I know what it's capable of. The only camera that I got rid of that I regret is I had I think it was Akita. It was a 4x5, a wooden. Had gold plated stuff, and it was a 4x5, and I had several. I had 3 lenses for that: a wide, a medium, and also had a lot of film. Film
holders.
Film holders. Yeah, I had a bunch of them, and I had all the stuff. I mean, have you seen my darkroom that I used to have on my Facebook?
I'll have to scroll through and see if I can find those pictures, because I don't know.
My darkroom was wonderful.
Yeah,
and you'll see my 4x5 on there. You seen that?
I seen the pictures of your darkroom. Yeah, it was amazing.
It was lacking nothing.
Yeah,
I had temperature control stuff. I mean, everything, washers, and and I used to, developing 4x5 was sort of a headache, but the results just you can't beat it. I mean, even the 6x7 is not a lot of difference between 6x7 and 4x5 in terms of image quality. I mean, they both are. It's hard to duplicate it digitally. But anyway, I don't know. I'm going to do that sometime. Maybe when this pandemic, I might find something that I would do it with. Maybe I'll do something with Ed. That might be a good thing.
Yeah,
that would be cool. Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'll find something to do with. Last long enough. But yeah, this is the only film camera. I've got a EOS thing, one of those EOS cameras sitting up here that somehow stopped working. but I wouldn't shoot 35 millimeter film. If I were going to shoot film, it would be medium format.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
There's something about a medium format negative, or the looks that from a medium format that's so much different than the 35. And I'm not even talking about size. It just has a different feel to our vision of it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so and that's all I got. That's all I've got is 120 film in my refrigerator, and then this camera behind me. So I could do it. I could do it tomorrow if I wanted. And we've got one lab left it's on South Broadway that will process film, and they do a pretty good job.
Who is that you used?
It's in Englewood. You want me to send? I'll find it and send you the link. I can't think of the name of it. I want to say Englewood Photo or something like that, but because I had to Google them to find out who still did it, because all the other labs that I was aware of had closed down. And they're there's another one that's out west in Nevada somewhere. They had moved out west that I used to use, but then I'm not going to drive all the way to Nevada.
Yeah.
And I could just drop down and go South Broadway, but it's on South Broadway. And
I think it's Englewood Photo, isn't it? I think
you're right.
It might be. I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. They're driving. It's on the west side of the street. Yeah. You go down South Broadway. Yeah. And it's in a little shop-it place. Yeah.
Have you ever used Zone 10 down on Blake Street, Bob Kennedy? He hand develops all his film, and he's an incredible printer. I haven't seen him in a while, so I'm not positive. He's down. Oh, I'm trying to think. I want to say like 17th and Blake or 18th and Blake.
I'm gonna look at Bob Kennedy. Why do I know that name? Did he used to be a newspaper guy?
I don't think so. He's always been a, fine art photographer, and then definitely catered to people that all he does is black and white.
Bob Kennedy.
Yeah.
I'll look him up. Yeah, I'd like to.
1738 Blake Street. He's still listed on Google, so I'm going to assume that he's still doing custom black and white processing.
I used to have a loft on Blake Street, 3377 Blake Street. I used to have a loft. I was the first person to take a space there. That's been a while. Yeah, there's some pretty incredible photographers running around Denver. This lady friended me on Facebook, and she looked like she goes out every week and photographs. She drives to Nebraska, to Utah, just driving and looking for things to photograph. She's pretty incredible. And I don't know, I like being friends with some of these people, because if they ever do any kind of a show or stuff, I'd like to
go check it out.
Yeah. Anyway.
So have you always been interested in music?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was interested in music before I was interested in photography.
Because you've had the opportunity to photograph quite a few people that have come through Denver, like Bob Marley. You have that great photo of Bob Marley, and you told me a great story about meeting his son, Stephen
Marley. Yeah, he was performing at the Gothic on South Broadway, and I knew this guy who used to be the road manager for the Whalers, Mancuso, and so he set it up. Because I told him I just have this picture of his father that I want to give to him. So I got in there. I got some of the photographs that I took of him on stage on my Facebook somewhere. So after the concert, he was on a tour bus, because they were going from concert on the bus. And the night before, they had performed at my old school, Kansas University in Lawrence. And so I was telling Stephen that the ironic thing about his performance and his tour was, this photo that I had for him, I took of his dad the night of after he had performed also in Lawrence, Kansas, and then he came to Denver. But he was not here at the Gothic like you are. I pointed like category, sort of diagonal from here at the University of Denver, and that's where he was the night before. And I think I got a very similar picture of Stephen that I got of Bob, and he didn't want me to leave the trailer. I'm telling, because I wasn't thinking about it that way, but when I realized he was very young when his dad passed, maybe 7, 8 or something like that. So he didn't have all these memories. And who was going to tell him. I mean, I don't know the people that performed with his dad were, and I had talked to, I think it was Junior Marvin, who had been with the Whalers, who I had talked to about this particular concert that I shot at DU. Well, he was playing with the Whalers, and I don't know if Stephen crossed paths with this reincarnated Whalers group. And I know Junior was there because we talked about the concert when I photographed Junior and his son and some of the people in the band. And I told him about that night. And there was a singer that played, that opened up for Bob. Her name was Betty Wright, and she had a song called Cleanup Woman. And I was mentioning it to Junior, and I said, yeah, I felt so bad for Betty because before she came on, people were throwing stuff at her, because she's performing. They're here to see Bob Marley. They didn't want to see Betty Wright or hear Cleanup Woman. So they're booing her and throwing stuff. And Junior said, yeah, Bob felt really bad about that because he really liked her and he wanted her on this tour. But people were just very cruel. They didn't want to hear it. But I didn't go into that with Stephen. I was just telling him about the parallels between his dad's tour and the fact that they literally the same path. Lawrence one night, Denver the next, only separated by a few miles in Denver. And he just loved that. And he was clutching that photo and didn't want me to leave. But there were all these people lined up outside the bus, and they wanted to get in because he was going to let them in and sign whatever. I don't know what he did. He signed stuff and talked to him and stuff. But he was really a nice kid. But yeah.
That's cool. I like that. That's a great story.
Stephen Marley. And he had a song out that year. It's been about 3 years, I think. I just love that song that he had out that year. It was one of my favorite songs, not my favorite song that year that I had heard. And I heard him performing. It was kind of weird listening to him or the Whalers do Bob's songs, because I heard Bob do every single song, almost every, especially all of his popular songs. And to hear him, have heard him sing it, and then listen to these groups that are covering his music now, it's just, not that they do a bad job, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
See that. Hey, so before we go here, I want to talk about these exhibits coming up. So tell us about this show that's happening June 5th, that opens June 5th at the Nelson-Atkins Museum in Kansas City.
Okay, that's a group of 32 artists. And I think I'm one of either 2 or 3 photographers that's in the exhibit. Everyone has a piece, a single piece of work that they've done. And that, like you said, it opens on June the 5th at the Nelson-Atkins and will run for 10 months at the museum. And prior to the opening, according to the email that they sent out to everybody, they have taken out space on 3 billboards, the 3 major highways that run through Kansas City. They're going to have a billboard on each one of those highways, promoting the exhibit, and also radio ads that'll be promoted. And this is pretty unprecedented in the sense that they rotate exhibits out, 2-3 months, but this one will run almost a year. And they've never done that before. They were saying they were considering bringing because there are most of the artists that are in this exhibit are in the Kansas City area, either St. Louis, Kansas City, but there's some from California and Florida, and then here in Denver, there are 3, Ed DeWhite, myself, and a woman named Juliet Hemingway. So they're thinking about flying in everybody to do a group photo, either in front of the shuttlecock that's out in front on the lawn, that's pretty identifiable with the museum, or in front of the actual museum. So I hope they do that, because I would like to. I don't normally like to be in front, but that I would, because it reminds me of that photograph that they took in Harlem, and I think they took it back in the 40s or something, or 50s, of all these jazz musicians that lived, Thelonious Monk and stuff, on the stoop in Harlem. And you see all these musicians. Well, now I think almost everybody in that picture from that year gone. But, that was a moment in Harlem's history that's, one of the most iconic images associated with Harlem. So given the nature of this and the fact that they'd never done anything like this, I at least for my grandkids, because I've got a young grandson, my youngest grandson, who's only 3, and he lives out of state now. I'm going to be 4. You know, if I were to pass away in the next year and I don't get to see him, so he won't remember me. So I would like to be a part of that if they do it, so that if someday he Googles it or I have a picture of it, he can see there's my grandpa. Not for me, because I don't care, but for my grandkids, I don't want them to think, you know, that all grandpa did was go to school and run over sticks. You know, that's not who I am. That's not what I identify with. So I want to do it, and I'm going to might call them tonight, as a matter of fact, and see where they're at with that. Because if they say come, I'll be gone. That next day I'll be on the airplane or whatever it takes to get there, because I want to do that. Any other thing, I wouldn't do it. But that's where we are with that.
Now, do you belong to this African American Artist Collective?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's affiliate. That's the whole collective, the group, right?
They put. I didn't apply or anything like that, but when I did, they reached out to me. That group did, for that exhibit that I had at the Bruce Watkins Center a year or so ago, and from then I met the lady who founded it, and so she's got me in one other one that was in Joplin, the exhibit, and I did that when they had 79 of my photos at Bruce Watkins. And then when this came about, you know, and all of a sudden she made me a member. And so, like I said, Ed was a member. He's been a member for a long time. And also the lady, Juliet Hemingway. And so, that's how, I'm a member of that. And if you go on their website and you look, they have bios of everybody, and I'm on there. I'm on their website. In fact, I'm supposed to be featured there, but that was supposed to be happening a month and a half ago. They haven't done it. They had me send a bunch of photos, and they were going to do a feature on their website, but they didn't do it. I don't know if they're still going to do it or not, but I'm a part of that group.
That's fantastic. Do you know, outside of the Denver artists, do you know a lot of the other artists that are part of the show? Let
me back up. Before they did the solo show at the Bruce Watkins Museum. I had one at the Volkus Ledy Gallery that I had. What did I have? 3 photos or something. It was a group show, Ledy Volkus Gallery in Kansas City, in the art district of Kansas City. So I met a lot of those people that are in this group there, because they came to the show, and they also had their pieces in that particular show. So I have done 2 shows, physical shows in Kansas City, one in Joplin, and then now this one that will open on the 5th, which will be the 4th that I've done in Kansas City. But I've met them, like Diallo French and Jason Piggy and a bunch of those people. Yeah, I met them.
So what are people going to see when they go to the show? What piece do you have in that show? Or can you talk about it?
I can show it to you, I think. It's a triptych. It's 3. It's images, a panoramic, almost 3 foot tall, 2 to 3 foot tall, and 6 feet long. And the reason I came up with that was because they're asking me for one image. And I'm thinking, well, if I have so many of Othar, I'll just do Othar, and then I will have 3 images in there. So that's, it was printed in Kansas City. And it was printed in Kansas City, and it was mounted and everything. So I just sent the file to him. I'm going to pull it up here. It was very difficult for me to just pick one. And because there's so much history behind Othar, I just decided to combine, because I've got so literally many, many images of Othar. So I wanted to, here's a picture they sent me from Kansas City of the picture mounted, and this is it before it went to the museum. Can you see it?
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There. It looks good.
And it's huge.
That'll be fun to see in person.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I'm going to tell you a story about this. This arrangement I have, I don't know what happened. I must have some sort of a brain freeze or something. This is not the image I intended. This is not the triptych that I intended to send. I had done another one because I looked at it. I said, I need to reverse the ulcer that's on the left needs to be on the right, and the one on the right needs to be on the left. But then when I sent it with me and my brain dead self, this is what was intended to go there. But they have never seen this one.
I like that too.
Yeah, I kind of prefer this one, but then when I looked at the other one, it's a toss-up.
Outside of this show, there's another show possibly that's going to be happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, though it will be in conjunction with the Global Artists Coalition out of New York City. They're now trying to consider which they want me to come and do a physical show. They think it'll be like 30 photos, and they want a physical space where they want to do a physical exhibit, but they haven't. Initially, they were talking about me doing it at the new Studio Museum of Harlem, but that isn't completed. It's right next to the Apollo Theater, but they don't know if it's going to be available in time to do what they want to do. So they're looking at some other spaces. So if they manage to put it together, they'll do a physical exhibit in New York with my images. But if they don't, there will be a virtual exhibit online. But that has a commercial component to it, where they're also going to be selling the images, and it's part of the promotion. So, I'm not as enthusiastic about that one, but they're pretty big and they got all this stuff going on. So I'll do it, but we'll see what happens with that. I'll let you know when it.
Yeah, if that happens, definitely let us know, because we'll definitely promote that.
Yeah.
So will that be just all your blues artists that you photograph, or will it be a little bit of everything?
It might be a little, it'll probably all center on Mississippi.
Okay.
So they may combine some of the 76 Mississippi with the blues musicians. But the promotion that they've done initially, I think if you saw, was mostly the blues musicians, but they did have a couple of images, or one in particular that didn't have anything to do with the blues, but they were just family members of one of the blues artists. I don't know if you saw it. It's this kids jumping off this.
I love that photograph.
Yeah, they got that. They like that. And they had me send them a high-res file of that. So yeah, that one. So I don't know what ultimately they will include in that, but I'm leaving it up to them. I have some thoughts, but whatever they say is fine.
Yeah.
Now, is that work all ready to go? Is that something you're going to produce specifically for that show?
No, I've got it all on my computer. It's all been scanned and done. I considered some of it I might, because I've gotten, since I initially started digitizing my film images, I've gotten better at the scanning, because there's a little, you just can't put the film in the thing and turn the scanner on and just scan it. You got to make some adjustments. They got histograms and all this kind of stuff, and you can move the highlights and the middle tones and all. So you got to, and I've learned with the scanning, my technique is a little better, and I can get better images than I used to when I first started. So once they decide which particular ones, I might go back and rescan it.
Gotcha.
And I have them ready to go, and they look pretty good on the site that they have so far. But I could rescan them, but we'll see what they say and how far they go with this. Haven't talked to them in a week or so I don't know. I don't know how fast this is going to go, but once they let me know, I'll be ready. I wouldn't mind. I've got first cousins that live in New York City and also in Washington D.C. that I have not seen, and they would like us to connect, and so that would be a good thing, because we could meet up in Harlem, and so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd love to see that show. I'd love to see a show of yours locally. I'd love to see a show of all that work. Have you showed any of that stuff here locally? Really?
I did. Let's see. What was I involved in? They had something at the library downtown, Warren Branch Library, and I had a couple of images, like maybe 3 images in that. But it's really weird. I don't know how to explain it. Even though this is where I grew up, so many of the people that I was close to, they're not here anymore. My mother's gone. My brothers are passed away, and it's just, I don't feel as comfortable doing something like that here as I do in Kansas City, because I have more family in Kansas City. And I really, I've never really been, I don't know how to put it. I've never, other than doing the news stuff, and I photograph people here, and I'm real close to, or was, Cleo Parker, and I've done work with her from day one when she first started doing stuff. I just don't feel the connection to Denver that I would think that I would. I feel like a stranger here, even though I'm in contact with a lot of people still who are prominent. I'm still Renelda and Jeff Fard and Jeff Campbell and people like that, and Wanda James, who owns Simply Pure, and all those people. Like Wanda, Simply Pure, the black lady who owns the marijuana dispensary. The first,
oh yeah.
She's a dear friend, and she wanted me, when they had the restaurant, they wanted me to do a show there, and I declined. So I don't know. I don't know why it is. I just don't. It doesn't feel right.
You don't like to be the center of attention, do you?
No, I do not. No. And people, it's easy to do it in Kansas City and New York because I don't have to face these people. I don't want to. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. Like Floyd, my friend, he's got like 3 shows coming up in Denver. He's got one in Arvada. He's got one at the Fine Arts Center in Kansas City. He's got a one-man show at the Red Line down in downtown Denver. And I met those people, but I don't think what I do is something that they are looking for, So I'm not, I'm not the kind. I'm not going to say, hey, what about me? If they were to approach me, I might think about it, but they haven't, and I'm not, I'm fine with that, because they keep, and I don't know how this sounds, but the people in Kansas City, the people in New York, they always refer to me as an artist, and I don't feel like an artist. I just, I like to take pictures, and when they made me, I had to make an artist statement for this exhibit. That was worse than a final exam, any final exam I ever took at KU, because I'm like, what am I supposed to say? And so I did. I ended up with an artist statement, and evidently they liked it, but it was hard, and I just got it in 2 hours under the deadline, and I finally got it done, and I sent it to them, and they said, oh, they loved it and everything. So my artist statement will be a part of it. But that kind of thing is very, very painful for me. And it was Kansas City, unlike in Denver, because I'm not there. I send them the file, and they print it and frame it and do everything. Here, I'd probably have to, even though they give you honorariums and stuff, I don't want to be bothered with all that. The initial shows that I did in Kansas City, the first 2, I did print, the one that had Lady Volkus, and then the other one that was Lady Volkus. Wait a minute. Well, okay, the Lady Volkus, I literally drove those to Kansas City because I have places to stay. I had, at the time, my mother was there. And also I have first cousins that are there. And then I have my friends who still live in Lawrence, and I always stay with them when I go there. And so I just drove to their house and then but I had to get them, I had to print them, I had to frame them. And at that Lady Volkus, there was no honorarium. Not only was there an honorarium at the Nelson, but the people at the AAC took it on themselves to have it printed and mounted and took it to the Nelson to have it. I didn't have to do anything other than hit send. And so I was more comfortable with that. So I don't know. It's not something that appeals to me.
Yeah.
Not something that I would, because I would always ask myself, who would come? They could say, oh, David Stevens. People would say, so what? Who's he? So no, I don't feel worthy of that. And I don't feel, literally, I do not feel like an artist. I just am someone who likes to take pictures and has taken pictures that for one reason or another, people are looking at now and thinking, oh, we like this. And that's fine. And I really appreciate it. But it's not something that I sought out, and it's not something that I'm really comfortable with. So I probably will never do a show in Denver. No.
Well, I guess Todd and I are going to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going, it's not like somebody in Denver has asked me to do a show, so I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, I think it's only because people haven't been exposed to it. I mean, I think if people saw the work, they would be blown away. I mean, I'm blown away, and I consider you an artist.
Yeah.
You know, you referenced Vivian Mayer that never got, any kind of recognition while she was alive, and it was only after that, people discovered her photography, and she's very much an artist. I see the same way.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the most validation, the best, the compliment that has meant the most to me came in the last month when Ed said to me what he said. And I was calling just to check in on him, see how he was. And before I told you the story, and before he said, David, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, what? And he said, where did pictures come from on your Facebook? And the one he was particularly taken by was a picture of a kid on a bicycle. And his compliments of that and these other pictures was like beyond anything I had ever heard. All I can tell you is I've never had or never been complimented like that. He was saying things like I was just blown away. And things like that. And I'm thinking, are you talking about me? But that really made me feel good. The fact that somebody like him would look at those pictures and think that, think what he thought of them. So that was enough. But so that's it.
I'll definitely say, looking at you, I've been scrolling through your Facebook page while we've been talking these past couple hours, and you have an eye that I really admire. So you are an artist by every stretch of the imagination. So
thank you. Yeah. Hard to get used to hearing that, but I'm glad that it's what's happening is happening, because I really feel, if I feel nothing else, I feel a certain obligation to Oprah and the people that I photograph to get some kind of, get that out there. And it has got out there. They had a whole website in Rome that was up for 2 or 3 years where they were promoting my photographs, and it's connected with a radio station and an annual blues festival. So I feel good about those things. And, but like I said, it's not something that I ever sought out or something that I ever thought would happen, because I just literally had these negatives. And like I said, I let Floyd take the 1976 ones to use with his paintings and stuff. And then once I got completely out of the analog and started doing digital, and I got all these scanners and computers and stuff, and I started doing it. I mean, I'm now on my 3rd or 4th printer. I've got a Canon, but the set of inks for this printer is right next to this computer I'm talking, $700.
Yeah.
So I'm out of ink, but I'm not going to buy $700 worth of ink, because believe it or not, you can get really fantastic prints from Walmart, because they have museum printers in those drugstores. And if they do it wrong, you can make them reprint. It doesn't cost you a nickel.
Yeah.
Boy, we talked a long time.
Yes, we did.
David, this was incredibly enjoyable. I could literally talk with you all day long. And,
wow.
I would love to meet up with you sometime.
I was going to say that before you said it. You said it first, but I was going to say we should get together sometime. Yeah, I would like that. I
would love that. I'll reach out to you soon. Now that I know that you're vaccinated.
Oh yeah.
We can, and both Wes and I have been vaccinated, so we'll have to plan that out.
Maybe the next time I'm in Denver, we're talking about maybe June or maybe July. I'll come down and we'll come over.
Okay.
And meet you.
Okay, for sure. All right.
David, I can't thank you enough for spending this much time with us. I really appreciate it. To our listeners, the exhibition at the Nelson-Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, Missouri opens June 5th, and it runs through March 27th of 2022. If you're passing through or you live in the area, go check it out. I definitely will go check it out. If I decide to drive and do a road trip this summer, I'll definitely stop in and check it out. You don't have a website, that's correct?
No.
Okay.
Only they're putting one up, a Global Artists Coalition. They're going to put one up for me. They haven't done it yet, but I used to have one that was connected to the Black Art in America, which is a website, but they took that down and they went strictly commercial. They used to have a site that had featured my photos, but no more. but because I've never had a reason to, I wasn't trying to get any attention, but yeah, so there will be something up soon.
Okay.
But we'll see.
So if you want to check out David's work, I will have his link to his Facebook page, and you can scroll through all the amazing photos that he has on there. If somebody wants to, go beyond that and acquire one of your pieces, can they just reach out to you and
they could, yeah, that's easy. Or they could go to that link I sent you from Global Artists Coalition in New York.
I will post that so that people can go directly there.
Yeah, because they will have them printed and framed and shipped directly to the people. So
fantastic.
They can do that if they want, or they can call me. It's fine.
Okay.
But thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This worked out much better than I anticipated. It made me kind of nervous, but.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, 'cause I don't like. It's just like when they asked me to do a artist statement. I don't know what do I say. It just I don't know what to say, and I feel when I do make a statement or say something like they had me do, I wonder how it sounds to somebody that's reading it or hears it. And I don't want to try to be pretentious or think I'm more important than I am. But when I read what I said in my artist statement for the Nelson-Atkins, I was comfortable with it. And I'm not embarrassed by it, which I would normally have been. And so people can read into it what they will. But I'm okay. All right, guys.
All right.
It's been a great talking to both of you.
Thank you.
We shall get together.
All right. That sounds great. Love your work. Love you, man.
Appreciate it. All right, guys. All right. Take it easy.
You
Talk
too.
to you soon. All right.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And on that note, for the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.